of the African artwork.
Yeah, I know, it's glaring, dude. It's very prominent. I always forget that I have it until I have to turn my webcam on. Actually,
you don't just stare at it. You just sit in your bed and just
yeah.
stare
I
at
actually think that's why I put it on. I put the webcam on the other side.
Oh, because you don't want people to see it.
No, it's like it's very distracting. It's like
You got it.
I also have insight into like my whole room, which like I don't know. I want to put like a screen over there, but I don't use a webcam often enough to warrant
the family photos.
Yeah, they're all there. Like I get the thing out of my head.
I don't think we can see it, so it's all good.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
All right, Curtis. So episode 90. So odd even. Is it my turn to intro?
I think it's your turn.
All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of Broken by Concept. This looks like a bit more of a unique episode. We have an extra person here. I'll introduce him in just a second, but obviously, my name's Nathan Mott. I help people get better at jungling. Curtis here, mid lane coach, and then we have Simon Swiffer Papamarcos. Am I pronouncing that last name right?
Yeah, nailed it.
Joining us as our first guest. So Simon, big shoes to fill here. You're literally our first guest at Broken by Concept. I hope you're excited.
That wasn't part of the brief, but yeah, okay. Yeah, no, happy to be here. Happy to join you guys. It's an honor.
So reading off your lead Wikipedia here, I don't know if you've read it for a while, Simon. This is just a bit about Simon. Greek heritage, known for its elegant looks and thick accent.
Very
solo killed ambition at WCG 2013.
Yep, that's my one shining moment in my life.
And I want to bring this up, Simon, right here, sort of again for the introduction here.
Yeah.
You might remember this, yeah. So for those listening on Spotify, yeah, this is 2013 when Simon was playing for Team Immunity, the OG roster with Radia and Venom. So we'll play out this little clip. Yes, this is you playing Cassidy into Nidalee mid. This was the matchup back in these days. Nidalee mid, that was like a super popular pick, right? It was like Gragas and stuff like that, right? So do you want to talk us through this play here, Simon?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I don't remember the specifics of it too much, but I will say that I always thought that this was a really good matchup for Cassidy, which it is. But I've never been manhandled quite like this in the like. I'd never been this. Also, this tournament was just so laggy. It was like it was like if we're just watching it back, I just remember like I couldn't like I literally lagged out and just started auto attacking there. It was just. They were so.
You actually lagged right there.
We're legitimately lagging, and like I just can't believe that this is happening. It was so. That's pretty funny. Yeah. Ambition was insane. He used to do that. Like I used to throw my Q at him. He walked ahead of the minions at level 1. I don't know. Like and then buffered his E on my Q, and then just started auto attacking me, and I just lost the lane at level 1. And I was like, oh, that's how you play. It was insane. Never happened to me before. Also, he landed so many spears on me in lane. I was just such a bad player.
So I was trying to find in this VOD, like where was the solo kill for Ambition? Was that in this game?
I don't think
it was.
I legitimately don't think that like this is the only time I ever played against Ambition, and I can't remember the solo kill ever happening. I always remember like Sam being there.
Yeah, because I literally went over this entire VOD. I'm like, I couldn't find it. I literally couldn't find the solo kill. Like, I think this was the moment, right, that everyone thinks was like a solo kill for some reason.
I don't know. Just I wouldn't believe Leaguepedia.
Yeah, I was wondering who wrote your little brief section there, but So we know not to trust Leaguepedia. So obviously 4-time OPL champion. Obviously OPL is not around anymore. But a lot of history in the O scene. You could say one of the goats of OS mid lane, tying in with Fantix, Roma, pretty much the one that sort of paved the way. I mean, obviously Curtis, sort of was in. I mean, we were always in the same era back in 2013. You got your start on, was it Frenetic Away? Was that one of your first like official pro teams?
Yeah. The first team that I joined, I don't even remember the name. I played AD on it though, and then Sequential SQL picked me up as mid lane, and then I can't even remember like the order as to how everything happened, and then eventually like X5, and then immunity, with a few like other teams in there.
I mean, obviously you're most well known for team immunity, and then obviously that turned into the Chiefs. So Chiefs was OPL era, again, 4 championships. Finals, you would have been in 7 grand finals or 6? I think it would be 7, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So definitely a lot of experience there. And now your official position, I mean, over the last year, you've obviously been the head coach for Excel's academy team in the UK LC. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, and halfway through this year, it turned into the NLC, which was like a amalgamation of the Nordic League and the UK.
So we have a lot of our listeners are aspiring pros, and people looking SoloQ, like maybe they're like 13, 14, looking to be potentially professional players in the future. And obviously times have changed a lot in terms of the way we became pro players and to what it is now. We've talked about our stories before in terms of becoming a pro player, just coming off SoloQ. Like, what was it for you? Like, was there a switch in your head that you sort of went, I can be a pro? Were you always trying to be a pro player? Were you just playing League for fun? Like, sort of, how did it work as 16-year-old Simon in Melbourne, Australia? Back in 2011, 2012.
No, I didn't think that. I didn't set out playing with the intention of becoming a pro player. Like, it was never a dream that I entertained. I think I just put a lot of time into it. Towards the end of high school and the beginning of uni, and then eventually just hit high enough rank and got offered a position. I thought that I could do it part-time while studying, and then eventually turned into full-time. It's kind of it was like I didn't like set myself goals or anything like that. I legitimately just had fun playing the game and had fun getting better at it.
And do you think that's changed nowadays? So do you reckon if you had the same mindset as you did when you first became a pro player, is it possible to become a pro player today or even just get into amateur with that same mindset, the way you became a pro player?
Yes, but I don't think that it's enough. I think that you need to be having fun playing the game. I think that that's kind of a given. I don't think that you can treat it without passion, or you can have no passion in it. But I think that there's so many more tools out there now, and there's so many more people with access to that, and the game's been partially figured out. I think that if you only have passion and you don't have any like critical ability to critically analyze anything in the game, and you're kind of going into it without using these extra tools, then you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're probably not going to get into it as far as like I did, just not having that.
So when you talk about tools, you're talking about like extra resources in terms of coaching, just the amount of knowledge and YouTube content out there. Is there anything else you're thinking of in terms of what you mean by resources?
So it's like even like practice tool is like something that we the three of us didn't have in the game. Perfecting combos, like a lot of the pretty normalized mechanical plays now were pretty extraordinary back then. Like, you think of Insec, and that's a very easy one. For example, like a lot of the thresh plays were pretty unheard of back in the day. It's like all of this stuff has become a lot more standardized because it's like access to seeing this, and like people who have done this stuff before make it standardized. So the level is so much higher now than it used to be. So if you're not up to that point, like if you have to figure out everything yourself, you're never going to break through. Like, you need to use other tools. Like, you need to be watching other people.
Because I mean, for us, from my perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, Curtis or Simon, but we were just figuring shit out ourselves. Like, there wasn't really much YouTube content. Like, you had Mobify, I think was around back then, but it's like, you're not going to trust the Mobify guide. It's like some of it was like helpful, but like a lot of it was like just figuring it out, ourselves. I mean, I didn't even know Udia was a bad champion, and I got to rank 2. But I think there was a blissful ignorance in that aspect. It's like, I'm just figuring this out. No one's telling me it sucks, but I think they did rip you. Maybe
They
they.
did.
I mean, I hate the champion now. I think I don't recommend anyone playing it. I don't play it myself, but like that just wasn't too much of an aspect, like back then. But that was fun. Again, I think the importance of fun was. I mean, I wouldn't have continued playing the game if I wasn't having fun. But was the fun in the game itself, Simon, or was it in the climbing the ladder and being better than everyone else?
Well, I started before season 1 came out, so I started before the ladder was there. Obviously you had like the hidden MMR, but I think I sunk like 900 or like 1,000 games into League before. That might be hyperbole, but like I can't remember the exact amount, but I know that I sunk a lot of time into the game before ranking even came out, and then once the competitiveness did enter it, in terms of like the like visible ranking system, then I think that was kind of addicting to rank up on it. But the kind of I always enjoyed the part of the game that I always enjoyed was mastering a champion, surprising people in the game with the stuff that I had figured out, being highest ranked amongst like my group of like my friends outside, like in real world and stuff like that, and then eventually it just turned into beating everyone in the game.
So you think mastering champion was the first thing? Just the joy of just figuring out a champion, mastering it.
Yeah, I saved the first champion I saved to buy was Karthus because he was so expensive that I had never seen him before. and then killing people with his Requiem and like catching people off guard with that was so exhilarating. Like that's kind of like where it was, and people would type in all chat like what just happened, and I'd be like, you suck. And I could never figure out like the skittle, like the Q mechanic at all, because I was really bad at the game. But I would just sit back and wait for level 6 to kill someone, and that was so much fun. That was so much fun.
Just the outplay potential of hitting that one button.
Oh, dude, that's what I meant by champion mastery. Yeah, that's it.
Champion mastery. That's actually such a common one, by the way. I've noticed with a lot of pro players, they had either a older brother that they wanted to get better than, or the older brother was also pretty good at the game or another game. And there was like a rivalry between them, or they had a strong friendship at school that they wanted to be better than. They wanted to be better than their friends. That seems like a very, very common, source of motivation for some of the most, even now, if I think back to all the people, it was either friendship groups at school or their brother. And if we even think about, I mean, just people I know, they either, all of them nearly had an older brother. And for you, was it your friends at school that you had, they all played League or?
Yeah, so the friendship group at my school, it wasn't like a friendship group because I was at a school where you kind of like intermingled across like the groups and everything. It wasn't like American high school, where it's like everyone's set in a defined circle or whatever.
In the cafeteria, everyone's sitting in their little.
Yeah, no, definitely wasn't like that. I was like, who do I feel like hanging out today with? The main group actually that I hung out with at school didn't really play a lot of games, to be honest. It was like the other groups that I was a part of that did do that a lot. And I'm not entirely sure because I played like quite a few games with them. The one that I played right before League was Dota, so kind of had some experience in that. I used to think I was so much better than I was, and then I went back and watched a replay years later that I had saved of a good game that I had in Dota, and I was like,
that's fascinating.
I deleted it out of shame. Yeah.
You had experience with MOBAs before League.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So that would have been a massive advantage because for me and Nathan, I mean, neither of us had played MOBAs before. So I know about you, Nathan, but for me, when I came in, I literally, I didn't even know what the hell was happening. That's why I played bot games to level 30. I was a complete noob and no one was there to teach me. And I only played by myself. I had no friends that played League. So
I thought the game was terrible when I played. I mean, I thought MOBAs were just because I came from MMOs and like I played some sort of FPS and I was like, this game, who would play this? I thought it was a kid's game because it's just like a little. I think I literally found it on like a little sidebar of like some advertiser or some website. it's like play League of Legends for free, and it's like this little like Lux or something like that, like throwing some spell or something. And but then obviously, I mean, obviously everyone's story obviously it grows on you, but I'm surprised because a lot of the Dota players, they're like elitists, but like never moved to League. So what was it for you? Like, because you're like, it would have been it's like a trash game, right? It's like the kids game because Dota's so much more complex. Well,
yeah,
like,
I did think that League, the first game I played, I thought it was trash. The first champion I played was Cassidy, and I thought it was kind of like anti-mage, so I built him like full attack speed, and then like was like, why isn't my W burning mana, and then whatever, right? And then and that also plays into what I called myself at the time because I thought I wasn't going to play the game. So I named myself like, I'm not going to get into that, but I named myself something pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's like a suitable audience for it, but anyway, yeah. And then so I named myself something. Yeah, it was Mimi. It was like from South Park because I thought that we wouldn't be playing the game for very long, and I'd go back to Dota and whatever. But I remember after the first game I played, I did go back to Dota, and then my friends stopped playing Dota, and I was like, well, this is boring. And so then I just moved to League and just had to learn that, and that's kind of, I was forced into it because I was elitist.
Well, where I want to go to from here, so we know a little bit about your background. So you have always played mid, and you were always, when I think back on your career as a mid laner, and this is actually something that's always fascinated me, Simon, and I haven't really had the opportunity to ask you this question. Now, so Simon has been around for a long time, and he was a very dominant mid laner. Like when I was around like 2016, around that 2016, even like 2017, you were you're like quite far ahead of everyone else. And that was before Fantix started coming up. And Fantix was probably the next best up and coming mid laner at the time. And then it felt like from, I would say, around 2017, maybe even before this, I might be wrong, where you started to progressively take SoloQ less and less seriously. Now, I mean, I might be wrong here, but I want you to talk to me about, and it's always something I've wanted to talk to you about, is how important is SoloQ to you? And now, especially that you're a head coach in the Academy League over in the UK, is SoloQ something that you put a very high significance on for players within your team? And just, walk me through what's your take on SoloQ? And maybe it changed across those years as well.
Yeah, so I think it's really good that you kind of touch on like the way that I viewed it. First of all, so it was so we already spoke about how I came into it and how like I always had the drive to kind of like beat people, like et cetera, right? So, and I saw SoloQ as the ultimate kind of factor in reflecting that kind of achievement. And then I think as it went on, and as I started winning the OPL, and as like people were like, oh yeah, you're like best mid laner, et cetera, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself in SoloQ anymore. I've already done it. I'd hit rank 1 at one point for like a week, and then just kept playing and lost it or whatever, and then won 4 OPL titles, as you said, and then went overseas and just completely. I had like pretty good tournaments overseas, for the most part. Like my performance was pretty good, and then with people overseas also saying that like you're very good, etc. I never had a need to prove myself in SoloQ after that. Like it was just time that I would rather spend watching other replays and stuff like that, and then trying things out. That's it. It became a different kind of tool for me after I'd already proved that I was good enough. I'm not sure if that's the best way to have approached it, to be honest. And I think the kind of loss. I never lost the desire to win, but I did lose that desire to kind of show off how insane I was. So like the ego associated with it, in a sense. I'm not saying that I'd lost my ego completely, but it kind of manifested in a different way. And as for how I've taken it, how I view like it now with players, if a player, I think that a player needs to want the drive to prove how good they are, to be honest. And so whether that there are some players that can't due to like injury or whatever. But it's like I need the player to understand that that drive that they have needs to manifest itself in some way, and whether that's through a billion one-on-ones or like SoloQ itself or whatever, there needs to be some other metric in place for the player aside from practice and scrims.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating. So
and then so that metric for you. So you thought that SoloQ again. You said that maybe this wasn't the right approach. I want to actually get into that because I mean, if I think of you when I was climbing the ladder, like season 3, even beginning of season 4. I mean, again, I think that was probably the time when you hit rank 1, or you're at least like you're 1K LP plus. And then it would go from that to I got Swiffer and Spooks on my team in SoloQ. It's like, here we go. This is going to be an interesting one, you know. Like it's like that interesting dynamic. I mean, you could obviously, I mean, you said it yourself. You could obviously tell that you thought that there was other ways you could spend your time. I mean, were those ways watching the VODs and stuff better? And again, like, why do you think that you maybe thought that was the wrong approach in terms of you should have kept taking SoloQ incredibly seriously?
So I don't think that. All right. So playing the game as much as I did for 7 years or 6 years or however long it was from pre-season 1 to season 5, season 6, season 7, I think eventually took its toll. Like I just couldn't. When I was doing all the SoloQ stuff, I was putting in so much time into doing it, like just playing the game over and over and over and over and over. That by the 6th year, I would tilt a lot more frequently. Like I don't think
that's the famous infamous I tilt clan.
Yeah, you the famous I tilt clan. I'd name myself piece of shit. Like it was like I had to. Like I don't think I eventually coped very well with SoloQ. Like I became, rather than focusing a lot more on myself, I would think like, why is no one playing like the macro correctly or anything like that? It was I would push a lot of the burden off of myself in SoloQ, which made it like a lot less of a constructive environment for me. And then which eventually led to me enjoying it less and me finding it more of a burden. It was like it's pretty like bad feedback loop. Yeah. And then eventually it just came to the point where I was like, I would rather be doing other things with my time. It wasn't like an active thought I would rather be doing other things with my time, but I found doing other things to be more rewarding. So
rewarding in terms of helping you become a better player, or just because you were just having such a miserable experience in SoloQ because you're pushing the burden on others and you weren't taking responsibility?
So it was both, because I felt like because of the environment, like because of the SoloQ environment, I wasn't learning and therefore I didn't find it enjoyable. Because of like my own expectation, like my own thing going into it.
Because I don't want this to be a psychoanalysis session of Simon.
Oh, right. No, it's all right. Go ahead.
I'm SoloQ career over the last couple of years.
One of my big theories, even for the average SoloQ player, is that ego is a massive contributing factor to why people just get stuck. They get stuck at a level of play or they plateau. And I view you, like you said before, I don't think it was a lack of having an ego. I think your ego was literally the reason why you kind of, I wouldn't say you fully plateaued, like you obviously improved between 2017 to 2019. But like you said, in your mind, you had already proven yourself. You had achieved everything that you want to achieve, and everyone recognized you as the best mid laner. But I think, similar to what Nathan had done for the last 2 years, he lives in the past. I thought the way I interpreted you and Spooks was that when we beat you in scrims, we were starting to dominate you in scrims all of 2017, right? So with direwolves. I think what actually held you guys back, it wasn't your inability to beat us. It wasn't that you guys were straight up worse players, but it felt like we would get more out of a game, right? And more out of a scrim. And these little things that add up over the course of a year made us so far ahead of everyone else. And the reason that was the case for you, and why you guys weren't improving, was because I believe that it was largely ego. I really do believe it was largely ego. And which actually, it always confused me why you never went to a coaching position when I did in 2017. You know, and so what do you think? I mean, would you say this is accurate? Would you say ego was a big contributing factor to holding you back?
A fair statement, Simon Curtis' analysis of 2017 for you.
I actually think yes. So let me quickly just address a couple of things there.
Sure.
I think that 2017. So the Chiefs was always kind of dysfunctional, and whether or not that can be attributed solely to me and like ego there, or shared burden amongst the players, because it was not every conflict in Chiefs involved me, but we all contributed to the environment. So it was like maybe the way that we dealt with things and everything was a reflection of like ourselves, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And so ego was a really big issue on Chiefs amongst, well, I know that I had it, and I think that like at specific points everyone else demonstrated that they did definitely. As well. Spooks. Yeah. And it was like, but we would go between phases of like, people would go through phases of personal growth and stuff like that, and then we would have, you know, those sweet spots again when it mattered, and come together for a brief time and be that really dominant team. Even throughout 2017, there were moments where, or there were periods where, like on the inverse of what you were saying, where we would actually put up, I think, like pretty good performances against you guys as well. During like at the first half of the second split, for example, until you guys went into rivals and then came back and smashed us again, and stuff like that, where it was kind of this ebb and flow, and then towards the end, it just became a lot more ebb than flow. And as for not moving into a coaching position earlier, I never actually thought that would be something that I would want to do. So even at the time, I thought that if I wasn't a player, I would just go back to the life that I was going to go towards beforehand anyway. I wasn't mature enough to see this as a path, and or secure enough. Maybe I was like, I'm either playing for the glory or like I'm just gonna go back and do the other thing. Like I didn't want secondhand glory as a coach, which is what I interpreted it as the time. Maybe that was just because I had a low opinion of coaching at the time, to be honest. But yeah, that I feel does that adequately answer everything? Or
yeah, no, that's actually super interesting because you've been on so many different rosters, right? And you've been in so many different team environments. Now you've been in a gaming house. Sorry for your gaming house was end of 2016 or not?
Yeah, second half 2016.
Okay, so you've been in a gaming house for total of, thinking what, 4 or 5 years or something, right? Somewhat.
Yeah, 2019 I actually stayed at home and would travel to the house as like an office kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, you've been in many environments regardless. And you touched on how the environment within 2017 contributed to that performance that was brought about. Given all of your experiences now as a coach, given your experiences as a pro player, what would you say are the biggest contributing factors, both positively and negatively, to an environment? And then as a two-part question, what would you have done differently as a player in those situations to bring about a better environment?
I think something that you need to try and instill is at the beginning when you're all coming together for the first time. It's difficult once environment's already been established, but when you're coming together and you're forming it for the first time, it's really critical for whoever is guiding said environment to crack down on things that you don't want to happen, because what tends to happen is you'll go in, you'll talk about like what team goals are, like how we want to behave with each other, etc., etc. and then the first couple of weeks will be all fine because everyone's still a bit insular, and no one kind of says anything that's no one's completely honest in the first couple of weeks with things.
It's like honeymoon phase.
Yeah, it is, right? It's like, oh no, I can forgive them for like fucking slurping their soup because I love them and that's just so endearing. But actually, a year of that and I'm gonna kick you out, kind of thing. And then, so the first 2 weeks are always generally fine. But then it's like as soon as you hit your first roadblock, it's the first conflict that kind of defines what your team environment's going to be like. And if the person guiding it allows the wrong message to be sent from players, then other players are going to pick up on that, and that's how they're going to, in turn, give feedback to other players. And so, if you create an environment where, because people are scared to get feedback, no one takes responsibility for things because people are scared that they're gonna earn the ire of their teammates. For example, you create this environment where it's so unbelievably difficult to make progress because no one accepts blame for anything that goes wrong. And I think something, if I could go back to, it's so hard because it was like we didn't have like there was no guiding force or whatever with Chiefs. It was just all immunity at the time. It was like I was 19, 20 with
a bunch of other 19, 20
I was
year olds.
like with a bunch of other 18 to 20-year-olds with no figure that could guide us, and so a lot of the stuff that we would say would come out really poorly, and then that set the environment for the next 3 years, right? And
well, this is because you play with the same players, right? So you're talking about.
I'm saying like I was on the same roster for so long that like it was almost impossible to do like hit the reset button because of all like the past history and like the baggage that came with it. In saying it, I framed it pretty negatively, but there was also a level of trust between the players because they had gone through so much that like the play that we had between one another and like the synergy that we had between each other as players couldn't be matched for a very long time. So if we could go back and frame everything in guide it in a much more like constructive mindset, then we could have had that synergy and had that honesty whilst also having a constructive environment for a lot more of the time, which is probably the one thing that I would change, because I think like in terms of, and obviously like the concepts and stuff, the like modern concepts with like wave control and everything is something else. But like if I could go back and change anything, it would be how at the beginning how I would frame things to people. I think that would be the big thing. And
could you give us an example? So is it more? Are you talking about frame things? Okay.
So no, easy. So with Sam, I would say things.
Sam's a jungler, just to clarify.
Oh, sorry, Spooks. I would like this is with Spooks, yeah, because I worked with him the most, mid jungle, etc., etc. So I have so many examples now that I'm thinking about it, but it would be things on like contesting neutral waves. And we'll talk about like a mage versus assassin matchup. So assassin has to play aggressively on the wave to be able to get prior, or else the mage clears it and controls river space, and then the assassin can never take the all in. So at the neutral wave, it's like assassin plays aggressively, and like Sam would be doing something else, and then we'd lose control because I wouldn't be able to contest, and then assassin would control, and then Sam would die red buff or something like that. Eventually, it's snowballing of pressure, and then I would say to him, you need to be here on this neutral wave for me to be able to establish this because it sets the pattern or whatever. I wouldn't frame it. Yeah, I wouldn't frame it like that though. I would say, why aren't you here? Okay.
In the game or after the game? Like how you would
after the game. After the game. I'd be like, yeah, this is a review. I'd be like, why aren't you here? And he's like, why do you need me here? And I'm like, because he's gonna all in me. And I would not know how to frame anything, and then he would say, why don't you call me? And I would just say like, you should just know.
And that was the discussion.
And that was it. Yeah, and I would just say, you should just know. And then he would say, well, like how am I supposed to right. That would be the end, but I can picture him being like how Like why? You know, like it just
Yeah.
there was no it was I was really bad at explaining the specific point that I wanted to get across. I would just, if it became too hard, I would just default to you just need to be better, or you just need to know.
Right.
Like that's bad. Like that's bad. And we didn't have a coach that could explain that properly either.
Right.
It was just trash, honestly.
Okay.
Like,
That's fascinating thing. You just flowing on from that. Do you believe coaches need to be high elo?
I believe that coaches need to have a very strong idea of game mechanics. Whether or not like
micro.
Yeah, I think and like that doesn't need to be reflected necessarily in Elo. But if a player comes to you and has a question and if you don't have an answer and you can't figure one out, like you're failing your job. Like you need like, I'm not saying that a coach needs to be able to solve everything the instant a play comes to him, because the game hasn't been figured out to a point like that. And it's constantly evolving, and patches change everything. But if a coach doesn't have a foundational level of knowledge to be able to problem solve that kind of situation, then they're failing their job.
Right. And you can't, and the coach, okay. I get what you're saying. You don't need to be high elo, but it seems like there is a common overlap if you are to get high elo, that you most likely understand these concepts at a quite deep level. So you would most likely be able to help problem solve more situations in a way.
Yeah. So if you look at like casters, for example, a lot of them have pretty high skill level. High, not skill, but like high analytical ability in the game, for the most part. But transferring that to teaching people things in the game, I actually think is they're completely two different kinds of skill sets. And it's why like casters don't always make the best coaches. Otherwise, because it's like you hear them talk and you're like, yeah, these are all very valid points, but it's like a big skill for casting is like building narrative, whereas like a big like coaching, you don't have to do that. It's two different skill sets, while simultaneously looking like they could be interchangeable. It's not like that at all. So
yeah, man, I totally. And one thing that's been fascinating for me, Simon, is that I feel like I am such a better coach than I was for the past few years, even though I haven't watched a single scrim. Because I have honed in so much into the very specific like underlying concepts of the game from a player's perspective. Sorry, and I've really focused hard on SoloQ. And that example you said to me before about you and Spooks, where the assassin needs to be able to contest the wave and position aggressively, and if they can't do that, then the mage is going to clear the wave. That will lead to a snowball effect, and the jungle will die. Like you back in the day. Yes, there was a framing issue. Obviously, you could have framed it better through wording, but I also think there's a lack of knowledge there. You don't understand the concept deep enough in the first place to really understand what's at play to be able to articulate it. And it felt like for me and for most coaches, and like this is kind of for casters, there's a massive, massive difference. And I'll say that the equivalent is let's just say a caster's overall game knowledge is to a master tier level. I'd say that's quite fair. As we know, as challenger nowadays, the skill gap between a master tier, low master tier player to a high challenger player is astronomical. Like I believe it's incredibly big. Now, the difference in there in the terms of the knowledge isn't like the overarching concepts. It's the granular. It's the really small details that contribute to bring that concept to life. It's what needs to happen specifically to bring that thing to fruition. And for me this year, and maybe this is probably been a big reason why XL want to keep you around, and I would assume that why you would make such a good coach is that you have that understanding of the granular. And maybe, and for me, and the question I'm getting to now is that now that you've had the opportunity to coach, have you found that your game knowledge has actually, even at a granular level, has increased, even though you haven't specifically been focusing on it? It's a weird question, but for me, things have made more sense because I've gone the other way around. I've gone from coaching to now really focusing on playing. You've gone from playing to really focusing on coaching. Have you found that there's a point in which it clicks? There's a point in which like, I can actually really understand why this situation is happening. And I never really understood why this was so replicable or why it wasn't replicable. Have you found this to be the case for you, or is this still something you're kind of figuring out? I don't know if I'm articulating myself.
No. I think you have. So there's actually, I can't remember if it's a quote or where I heard this before, but unless you can actually teach something to someone, you don't understand the concepts well enough, right? And exactly like the same example that I had with like Sam, where I just said you just have to know, is because I couldn't explain the 5 steps that would come after me not being able to contest the wave properly in a cohesive manner to be able to transfer that knowledge or be able to teach that knowledge. It's only since I've taken a back step and I've been like, okay, why is this important, or why is this important? And it's like, what does this lead to? How can this lead to this? Like, what's the counter to this? It's like the way, and the other thing that I will say is that working with Young Buck this year, and the things that he like just literally naming concepts is
Just having a title for something.
Yeah,
like,
just having
this concept is, and then we can apply this to all these situations.
Yeah, it's like the transferable knowledge from like understanding this one concept to the other aspects of the game, so that it's not like you have 100 different concepts throughout the entire game that you have to keep track of minute by minute. It's like this can be applicable to this because it's like it's just a transference of pressure, like for example, or whatever. But just actually naming concepts and having them be applicable like that is something that I never had as a player. Never. It's like we had like 1 or 2 things that we would come. It's like if you wanted to get something on like the other side of the map, this is like Chiefs. If you wanted to get something on the other side of the map, but you wanted to keep people locked up in a specific area on the other side of the map, we'd say like, I can't remember. I think it might have been Sam or Swiper or something. He coined this, but it was like they just said, "Oh, like tickle them" or whatever. And so like the 4 other people over here would like keep the whole team relatively engaged, whilst the split pushers would take everything on the other side of the map. And like something is like basic as that, we had like a meme name for, because we never got taught the concept and we just had to do it.
But it worked, right? That worked.
Yeah, but it's like, but then legitimately teaching that to somebody else and giving it like a serious name or stuff like that it's just so you can cover so much more content. Like you can become such a better player, and then you can have a concept for minute 5 that's applicable at like minute 40, right? And it's like and then the player as well, it's on them to be able to carry the concepts into other aspects of the game when you've taught them that as well. So yeah, I think that I've learned a lot more about the game. I don't know if I've learned more about the game or if I've been able to articulate it, because it's like a lot of this is just kind of pattern recognition and then being able to verbalize it. So something that I realized when I was trying to teach someone something about laning 2 mages against one another, like Oriana Syndra or something like that. So you've got like the skill shots and everything that is like its own mini game in itself, and then you have how you're CSing minions. And the thing was, it's like whoever gets the lead in the matchup, you can almost put it down to how they're auto attacking and the pattern that they're auto attacking. So it's like if I'm ahead on CSing because I've got an extra auto in or something, then that means I can now harass you on the auto, on like your CS auto, because I've established the pattern of the lane with my auto attack at the beginning. And you are now, unless you give up that minion, you can't reclaim control of the pattern in the mid lane. And that's something that's like really, really small, but something I'd never verbalized to anyone before. It's just something that like I figured out through intuition.
It's intuition,
yeah, and then applied to my gameplay. But I would never have really thought about it had I not tried to explain it to somebody else.
I've had the exact same experience. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, there's these things that you would have done, and like these things that you did intuitively that you had no idea that you were actually doing.
Yeah.
And you didn't know what to call it. You just felt good. Right? It felt right to do. And that's been the exact same experience for me.
I mean, Curtis, we always have those conversations.
I love it.
Saying how much we don't realize we know about the game. Because I mean, we work a lot with lower yellow players, right? And obviously our content's like tailored for that. We have to like literally get on the PowerPoint slide of like, I got to explain this champion. Okay, how do I explain it? It's like, okay, actually, no, I do this because of all these things that I take for granted that I'm doing subconsciously. But someone who's platinum doesn't understand these concepts.
Yeah.
And but the funny thing is you can still apply. You still need to actually explain those things to pro players. Again, you need to get back to like a granular level. And my question always is to you. I mean, if I look at you, right, like you're saying that you think that the way you frame things back as a player in 2016 was like you could have done a lot better job. But I mean, the funny thing is, I would say that you're probably one of the most articulate players in terms of all the people that I knew in OS, but you still think you did a bad job, right? So how could you expect anyone else, any 18, 19, 20, even like, you know, I mean, even I think Mick, even now, like Curtis and I say, we sometimes struggle to articulate concepts, and we're literally trying to be teachers, coaches right now, right? How could is it possible for someone to have that skill, or do they need, like, does there need to be figures in the scene like coaches? And is this just the importance of coaching, you know, 30-year-old plus players that you can respect to be able to articulate things? Or could you ever have worked it out as Chiefs together if you were like different type of people, you guys had a better team bond? Was that possible?
I think so it's like, there's always, yes, you can, because that's how, like, there's a lot of innovation that happens that isn't coaching. Like, there's a lot of innovation in the game that comes from like a playing group. Like, if you look at G2, it's probably not just it's probably a combination of the two, right? It's like they come together and they're like, okay, well, like this wave's neutral, we can ignore it, we can go mid, or whatever. And that's, if you fostered an environment where you're mature enough to be able to have those kinds of conversations, then that's great. The problem is, it's like when you don't have that, I think that literally, if we're actually just talking about brain development, I think it's very, very hard to have that level of introspection when you're at 18. I think that, like, unless you've had an experience earlier on where you've had to delve deep within yourself, or you have a level of empathy for people, or whatever it is, where you can connect to somebody and you can explore ideas, I think is actually something that you're taught as a person that isn't a lot, or comes to you a lot later on in life after you've had a lot more experience.
So it must be learned through experience. You couldn't figure this out together. Again, the key word you use there is maturity, right?
Yeah.
And brain development.
Yeah.
So it's just not, and then basically you're saying it's just not possible with an 18 or 19, 20-year-old, unless you had external help, or even if you had external help, it wouldn't be possible.
All prior experience. I think you'd be very hard pressed to find an 18 to 20-year-old that can properly self-criticize, or properly self-analyze, have that retrospective insight. Like, I think there needs to be, like, people need to go through trials in life to be able to see that, or be able to explain these things that they have within themselves. It's like we were talking, like when you were talking about like teaching people concepts that are intuitive to you. It's like when you think about throwing a ball or whatever, and you think about all the physics that goes into actually like throwing a ball, and like if you're aiming it at a specific point, and like how it's just throwing a ball, right? Like you pick it up and you throw a ball.
You just tell someone to just throw the ball.
Yeah, but you're accounting for like the arc of your arm, like the strength behind your arm, like you're accounting for gravity, like the whole time, like you just know gravity because you've experienced it your whole life, right? It's like you don't have to, like, might not be the best example because almost everyone can kind of throw a ball, but like the level of expertise to which you can throw a ball, like, depends on how much you think about it and like what you consider with it. And in the same way that, like, there's levels to throwing a ball in the same way that there's levels to league. It's like I can pick up a ball and throw it, and it's like whatever. but I'm not thinking about like anything else. I'm not thinking about any of the physics with it, and maybe like you don't, but to throw a ball well, you have to consider a lot more things, and it's like, and that comes through practice, and that comes through time.
Yeah, and this actually, before you're talking about, what is and isn't possible with players and things like that. I mean, now, given your experiences and now actually having the opportunity to coach for an entire year, what are qualities that you think a 17, 18, 19-year-old up-and-coming player should have? What do you look for as a coach?
Perspective. I think like perspective and maturity are really, really, really like undervalued. I think because it's like, okay, the mechanical stuff is great. Like having like a great, like that's a given. You need to have a fantastic like mechanical capability, or else you're not going to become a pro player.
I always think of it this way as well. At the end of the day, Uzi and stuff, like Faker and stuff, they were 18. They probably had none of this stuff. They're world champs.
Yeah. But it's like, but you can foster like the maturity and stuff like that. But it's a bonus if two players with equal mechanical ability come to me, and one of them, and it's difficult to get in like an interview or whatever. But like if one of them can display a level of insight, and the other one can't, and they have the same mechanical ability, I'm going to take the one that can display insight, because that just means like that skill set shows that like you have the maturity to take criticism, and you have the maturity to develop a lot quicker. Which in this game is like, if you can outpace like everyone else, like if you can learn things quicker than everyone else, you're going to be better than everyone else. Because the game hasn't been figured out, and you like it's consistently evolving, and the quicker you can apply concepts and the quicker you can learn them, the better you'll be.
I think better you'll be. I think how I use that example of like Faker and Uzi and stuff like that. I think that the stuff that you're talking about, perspective, insight, that will dictate the length of your career. So you can be very good in short bursts of time, and this is why I think we're seeing such a huge turnover in esports. I mean, there's many reasons. I mean, we can talk about burnout and like just the perception of age. I mean, we can all talk about that. It's like we're viewed as like boomers, like washed up, right? But it's like, is that really, the case? Like, were we beaten down because of the stereotypes, right? But
well, if you think about it, sorry to interrupt, Nathan, but if you think about it, what other sport requires you to play thousands of games?
Yeah. Well,
what
I mean,
other sport does that?
Couldn't you think that you could convert a game of League of Legends to a drill or a practice? Does that not overlap? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the thing about physical sports is you actually physically can't train
exactly. You have
as
to
much
recover.
as you could theoretically from League, And at the end of the day, Korean players, the way, I mean, the way we all got good, we just played 18 hours a day, like Koreans, that's why they do it. Like pretty much everyone has gone through that phase, but you simply can't do that for physical sports. I mean, does that affect burnout? Like, is it inevitable? Is it inevitable that a player can't go past the age of 23, 24, 25 because of burnout? Or is it this they had the lack of perspective, insight, being able to self-reflect to be able to have long careers?
So I'm just gonna take it. Like I'm just gonna say that I've had a lot of moments and whatever that I've been allowed to have that introspection. And the thing that my conclusion was that I didn't want to play as much, right? Like that. So that was the end of that was basically the end of my career, because I was like, I don't have the passion for it anymore. I can identify that based on like the stuff that I've gone through. I don't want to play it as much anymore, and that's fine, right? So that led to me retiring and then going into coaching. As for longevity and everything of players, I think that as you said, like there's a physical restraint to physical like you can't continuously like run a drill in like a physical drill because you just tire too much and it becomes exhausting. I don't think that like mentally, because a lot of the game is mental, because the only physical side of League is like stamina, endurance, and like your fingers and your general health, right? As for like mental exhaustion, I think that is something that as a race we actually are only just discovering the implications of in the last like 20 years or whatever. Because these concepts of like burnout and overworking and all this stuff is something that was actually never really paid a lot of attention to, historically speaking, in humanity's history, right? It's only within like the last kind of 50 years or whatever, like I'm not sure of the time frame, that like mental health and everything has entered public discourse.
And why do you think? And why is that? Is that just because of the internet, social media, people working longer hours? You have to hustle more to get ahead.
No, I think
it's not physical jobs anymore.
Yeah, I think if you look at like, if you look at like the hours that people used to work during like the Industrial Revolution and stuff, it was probably a lot more than what people are doing now, right? It's like
more. Really.
Yeah, well, I mean, or like the labor was a lot more intensive than what you're doing now. Of course, the labor was
more intensive.
Right? Yeah, and it's like, and you would work in factories for like 15 hours a day and stuff like that, and you would physically burn out, and like you would snap, and then like, but like no one cared because you were dispensable. And it's like, and it's just through like an importance on like, well, in Western society, like more of importance on like human rights and like everything like that. It's like just where like the way that society's evolved to where we are now means that there's more time to reflect on like the brain and the mental side of a lot of things, whereas before you didn't really have that because people were just a lot more expendable, and so it's very difficult to say like what the maximum input for like a pro player can be, because like it's very difficult to determine that. But I would say that like if it like in like 8 hours a day of very, very intense mental stimulation, like over a prolonged period of time, is probably the main reason for burnout.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying the last 30 years, I mean, it's really been mental work. We're more moving towards mental work versus physical. And physical, you can, cap the aim, and your muscle, your arms just don't work anymore, so you stop it.
How do you cap
mentally? That's actually such a good question. Yeah,
it's like
no one. Yeah, I mean,
there's no measure. There's no measure. It's like you can have an estimation that like you read a study that's like, we only focus for like really 3 hours a day. Like you get the most out of like an intense 3-hour session, and then it's like you're cooked for the rest of the day, and everything else you do after that is on diminishing returns, right? But fact, like, is it? I don't know. I like it's still disputed. There's too much work being done for you to have like an equal figure. So it's like people like, especially like Korean and South Korean culture is like, work till you drop, work till you can't do it anymore, and that's what they do, and then that's why like there's just burnout. That's what I think. So it's like, how do you get the most out? Like, I'm trying to get the most out of the players that I have now without causing serious implications for them in the future.
So would you say, so you're trying to get the most out of your players in as little time as possible? Is that what you're trying to achieve?
No, because if I were trying to get it out as little time as possible, I would enforce things that would make them play up to like 15 hours a day, because it's like if you want the quickest results as quick as possible, you just put in. I feel like you put in more time, because even the diminishing returns mean that like
there's
still something coming through. Yeah. Right, that you're still building something, like you're still backing up those myelin sheaths, but like the longevity of their careers, I think, will be severely hampered if you do that.
So how strict are you as a coach? Like, what is it like over for you in the academy, your team? Like, what is enforced and what isn't enforced? How loose is it?
So the expectation, in the second split, to kind of get a standardized practice time outside of scrims, we had a minimum SoloQ
like a quota.
Yeah, where I would get all the OPGG accounts that they have, all the League of Legends accounts that they would have, and then I would go at the beginning of the week. We would set goals like 3 games with this champion, 3 games with this champion, to make it more productive. And then come 1 week, I would go through their OPGGs, like across all their accounts, like list all the games they played, listed all the champions that they played on those accounts, and then present that back to them at the start of the week, and we'd go through what worked, what didn't, what we would drop. But 25 games was the minimum that we would do through the week. And then if you got more, like if you like had the most games or whatever, rather than trying to have like, because I didn't want to say like the more you played the better it was kind of thing, but I would let those players kind of like dictate their own practice time a lot more, because there's just a higher volume of time that they're spending. So I wouldn't make like everyone would have the same amount of champions and the same amount of games to play within them, but these players would be able to have more fun playing the game because they wouldn't be forced to be playing specific champions that would be more work like. So if you did play more, you would have more like fun,
more flexibility.
More flexibility, which was the reward kind of in itself, but it wasn't actively promoted.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you have a coaching philosophy going in? Like, did you have like core principles or core sayings or messages and things like that that really kind of?
I think one of the big things that I had when I was a player was that a lot of some of the coaches that I had tried to push an agenda on the players that didn't fit. And so I was very conscientious of that going into it, in that I always saw my job as a coach was to bring the strengths of the team to like together and have them work with each other and have them learn each other to an extent, while simultaneously like teaching concepts and stuff like that, incorporating the players' playstyles into those concepts within boundaries. So there was something that I picked up in Order, which was always be predictable to your teammates. That was something that I feel like it might have been the thing that I said the most to the players this year, was if they ever caught their own teammate off guard with a play that they were making or something that they were doing, that it was incorrect, that they had communicated it incorrectly, or they didn't know each other well enough to do it. Because if you're giving your team the same amount of time to react to a play as the enemy team, then you've done something wrong. That was something really big. Trying to create just an environment where the players felt comfortable in the strengths that they had, and me not coming in and saying like, we're going to play tank top like this year. Like going in with preconceived notions, I think is a mistake. Even if you have a strong idea about what the meta is and what the meta should be played like, you should always be willing to play to your players' strengths over it.
Interesting.
Do you think we've talked about this a bit more on the podcast a bit, in terms of the person who's like the cultural architect? At the end of the day, people sort of, we're designed to be either like, followers humans, right? Like it's either you're like a leader or like you're a follower, right? Does it have to come from a player, or is it from a coach? And I mean, can it be work based on each team? Like, is it specific situations?
I think it comes from charisma. I think you can almost measure it in whoever has the most charisma in an environment generally dictates how the environment flows. And that's why usually
person with the most charisma automatically the person with the most charisma automatically is the leader. Is that what you're saying?
I think like you'll find that they come pretty hand in hand with one another. I think that like a lot of the reason that almost every leader has an aura of charisma about them isn't coincidental. And it's why like a captain will almost always be the most vocal or whatever, or the most charismatic. It's because they can get people to follow them. And so you need someone in the team to be able to have people follow them, whether that is the coach or whether that is the captain. Like you need one, or else you have 6 people that do nothing.
Which one has more influence, the player or the coach?
It depends on how. It depends on how the person acts. So, if there's 2 equally charismatic people in the player and the coach, right? and it's just too many different factors. But I would say that, like, generally speaking, like, a player would respect, like, I don't know. It's so many like inherent biases and stuff like that. But a player always understands a player a lot more.
Well, that's me and Nathan's hunch, right? That the best player, or our I don't know if this is your theory as well, Nathan. Is it? I don't know if we've spoken about this, but like the best player on the team generally has the most weight to swing around in a way.
But I mean, this is what I want to start to get at. It's like, okay, you talk about charisma, Simon, but I mean, there's got to be a level of competency. Let's say if that person's charismatic, but they're the worst player on the team, can they ever be the leader and have the most influence? I mean, just think about the times the players that you've worked with, or the players that you just sort of you weighted their opinion more than someone else from your team. I mean, at the end of the day, that's definitely happened.
Yeah.
Who did you lean to, people that were more skilled or more charismatic? Let's use Radier, for example. I think he's a great example because I would say Radier is a very charismatic person, right?
Yep.
But he was by far the best player in O's for a long time.
But I think this is going to work right against your point because I favoured Bryce's opinion a lot more of the time over him.
Really? Because Bryce was more charismatic.
I had a better. I think when we were playing, I had a better personal relationship with Bryce.
Okay, so then actually, I mean, okay, so yes, this sort of
it's so many. There's so many different factors.
I think this is hard.
I mean, but I would also argue, okay, what about when you first joined Team Unity with Radier?
Yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, Radier 2016 was not Radier 2014, 2015.
True.
Right?
True.
So then you could be sort of distorting that. I mean, again, I'm just questioning. It could still be the case that because Ejim wasn't on your team till 2016. You know.
Yeah. 2013, 2014 Radier. I had a lot of respect for Radier as a player and a person. I always did. But maybe until towards the end. But anyway,
you see, towards you just said right there, Simon, towards the end. So then, of course, EGM.
But he was never. He never felt like the leader of the team.
Okay, interesting.
And in I don't know who the leader was in the early. Like I can't. Like there was no standout personality in 2013, 2014 that I can think of that like we stood behind. I thought it was almost like a coalition of 5 people.
It doesn't have to be stand behind necessarily. It's like
who had the most weight? Like, but I don't. It depends. Like for me, it was who I could understand the most when they were explaining a point. Like that's actually just what it came down to. If you had 2 people arguing over a point, but one of them I could understand more, I would side with the person that I had more understanding with. I don't know how to.
No, but I think that's all different. The reason this is all different back then is because this was not a proper environment. This was all online. Like I don't think you could get a proper indication of what it would be like now. Like if you were to somehow transfer those exact players into this exact time and you're in the same gaming house or like a team environment, I think it would be a completely different situation. Because if you had a player that was that dominant as they were then, like a Radier. So for those of our audience who don't know, Radier was an 80 carry that we had in Oceania, which is legendary. Like he was so far ahead of everyone in the SoloQ ladder. He was just unbelievably so far ahead of everyone. If you had a player like that now, who was like rank 1 on your server in NA or EU and was that dominant, let's actually bring it to what it would be like now, because I feel like back then it's just so different.
Okay, so if you look at Magi Felix, then
okay,
so he's the Fnatic.
Right. So he's a Fnatic Academy.
He got rank 1.
So he got rank 1 in multiple different roles in EU West. Now, this is hearsay. This isn't, so I've never worked with him personally or anything like that. But based on from my understanding, he is not a vocal member of his team. Right. And like he defers a lot to other people in the team. So I can't speak to the dynamic in that if he says something when somebody else says something, like, does his opinion carry more weight? I don't know. But he isn't the charismatic person in the team that people follow. In fact, when we played against him a lot of the time, he was put on a very much so like a utility role, whether or not by like his choice or not. Like that was kind of like I saw that as like speaking to more like a personality thing, not so much as like the meta or anything like that. It was like very interesting to see how like such a dominant player in the region didn't carry that through to a competitive environment at all.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And
So
you think that would have come from because he's not choosing the champions that he wants to play. It's more coming.
Well,
from
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's
no
so
insight into that.
I was actually listening to, I think it was like a Thorin and Monty, and they were talking to Bwippo on like one of their, I don't know what the show's called, Summoners Inside or something like that. And they were talking about Knight at this tournament, Recent Worlds, and how Knight's, he's known for his Akali and his assassins and his carry champions. And he was put on like Orianna, like nearly every game. Like he was playing a utility approach nearly every game. And comparatively to even like teams like Suning, they were picking Angel, Akali whenever possible. And it got me wondering, and it's funny you bring that up because I was thinking to myself, if you actually watch Knight stream, I don't know if you've seen it, watch Knight stream, like he seems like an incredibly passive, soft-spoken type of guy. He's not like a Doimby, even not like a rookie. Rookie even seems a lot more, I would say, assertive. Yeah, that'd be the right word.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, does the player's personality affect how much priority, their weight? I've been, in draft, and it seems like a similar thing was happening with Magi Felix.
Yep.
Which kind of lends to the argument to say that charisma does mean a little bit more than competence, overall competence.
Well, okay, but if we think about best case scenario, I mean, Curtis, you and I agree on this. Is that, I mean, the best case scenario is that the leader is the #1 in skill and most charisma.
Yes.
Able to, like, again, we look at examples like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, and stuff like that. These are the cultural architects. So someone like Magic Felix, is he going to be very capped on his career? He could be the best player in the game, but if he doesn't learn this whole charisma thing, he will never be able to lead the team.
Oh, it comes from like this inner confidence that you have, and whether or not you get that through the game, through the performances that you have, or you already have it, like it's up to the individual. Because I'm not sure, like I don't know that much about like NBA or anything, but I don't know whether or not Michael Jordan or Kobe or any other athlete that you mentioned, like I'm not sure whether or not like their personality shifted after they were lauded as like these prodigies, or whether or not they already had that going in.
Well, if you look at their background, their history, they were fierce competitors from day dot. Like Kobe Bryant talks about, like when he was on, this was before he was in an NBA, when he was in college and things like that. Yeah. Like his mentality going in was like, I'm going to show everyone that I'm a different breed by putting in so many hours and set the scene from day one.
Yeah.
When everyone else was eating in the cafeteria, he was grinding and like training more. But yeah, I think that it does. It's can you even learn? Like how do you develop that? I mean, actually, more I guess practical question. In your team, is there a player that maybe struggles with confidence, or maybe they're not that assertive? And how are you working as a coach to bring that out in them, if that's even the case?
So something I won't go into specifics, but yes. And the way that I tried to do it was by validating a lot of the like a lot of positive reinforcement and validating a lot of the ideas that they had. And if they were uncomfortable to bring something up, I would bring it up and credit them with it in front of everyone. So I would try and build them up so that they felt more confident in their own ability, and then therefore become more assertive in the game.
Did you see results across the year?
He was inconsistent, but towards the end, I would say more consistent with like his own calls and like his confidence in his ability. Yes.
Right.
You think positive? So this is another one about like, when you look over a game, the positive reinforcement versus obviously looking at all the mistakes and be like, you suck here, we suck here, this is all negative.
Yeah.
Do you need to balance that? Do you think that one needs to be, you need to have more of one or the other? Because you could also argue as well, a certain type of player doesn't want any sort of positive reinforcement, or they just like
I as a player, I didn't really like positive reinforcement.
Right.
The thing is that when I'm doing macro review, and I think that what they've done, like it depends on the situation. Like when I think what they've done is like incorrect, but it works because they're just better players, right? I'll say, okay, this worked here. Think about it from their perspective. Like, what would you have done if you were in their position, and what else could we have done instead of take this, right? So it's not like that. It's not so much a criticism, but I try to expand how they think about like
asking high quality questions. That's an example of a high quality question.
That's a high quality question.
So
that's what I love. That's my favorite style of coaching.
Yeah, but then it's like, when you're right in that people respond to things differently. When I'm doing lane focused review with players, it depends on the person. I generally go into the macro stuff with like I always open with like a lot of things, like some things that we did well. I'll pick 1 or 2 points that we like fuck up in the mid game, and then I'll end it on something decent, like a shit sandwich or whatever, right? And then something else that I'll do though is be very upfront when a game is just shit from beginning to end. Like you just have to call a spade a spade. It's like, I'm just like, okay, this game was just a complete write-off. Like there's almost nothing, like we moved around them, but they just outperformed us in every single macro decision. They out-microed us everywhere.
Nothing
I was like,
it's just
I was like, guys, shit games happen. Like whatever, just get over it. Like don't think about it. Like review it in the time that you want, but like we made a lot of the right macro moves. It just came down to mechanical ability at some points, or we made the wrong macro moves and we got outperformed like in micro. It's like sometimes games, like there's just a massive lapse in judgment that happens, or an enemy team is having a really good day and snowballs it incredibly well. I always like to think about League as dance. It's like someone makes a move and then you make like the next step and then they make the next step. And then it's like whoever slips on part of their routine, like faces the consequences of that. And then it's about righting yourself and then having like the resilience to like go back out and take those steps, like perform again. It's like, because you can teach macro to like almost like a very, very high level, but it's like a lot of the time it's just like how much of it is memory, like how much of it can we actually implement at this point without faltering. And you see like the top teams in the world, it's like someone does this is the counter move, this is the counter move, this is the counter move, and then someone doesn't counter something properly and the game snowballs the other way. And it's just like how well do you understand the concepts that we've been teaching, or I've taught, or whatever.
How do you foster resilience?
I think you just have to, like the thing that I was talking about with knowing when you're shit, and not thinking that like that's regular, like that's an irregularity. So when there's a bad game, like when I say that the game is shit and there's almost nothing we can take away from it, that doesn't happen very often. And so what you do is it's like you frame it in a way that like this is the exception, this is the bad exception, right? And so when we're playing badly, that's the exception. We're usually good. And then so you try and reinforce that framework for the players, and you have a baseline of you have a standard of reinforce a standard of not excellence but like competency. And then when we fall below that, like identify it, know that happened, and then just like move on from it. Don't dwell on it because that brings everything down.
Right. Speaking of resilience and dwelling as well, we talk about this a bit as well, Curtis, about the impact of scrim results on a player's confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, going into that week of your professional game, do you think? I mean, how do you try and firstly, do you think that that's a bad thing of tying your the way you're actually progressing as a team? Like, are you learning based on a win or a loss? I mean, firstly, is that important to sort of make sure you're not focused on the result or the learnings? And how do you make sure players aren't tunneled on that? Let's say you go 0-3 in scrims. It's very difficult as a player. I mean, we all know this to still. I mean, even like sometimes you could literally be getting even though you could learn out of those games, your ego, everything. These players are shit that I'm versing. How do you deal with that?
So what I try and have in scrims, and I wasn't as consistent with this as I probably will be for next year, but what I tried to have in scrims was defensive and offensive goals. So let's say like you're getting shit stomped by whoever, like like either someone in the game, or like I'll gently remind them that like the thing that we're going to be focusing on this game is like how to block the enemy from snowballing as effectively, right? And that's something that like I would cover at the beginning of the week, like different kinds of movement, or like when to sacrifice waves to protect like turrets and stuff like that. So the mindset needs to shift when you're losing to how much is it that I'm going to be getting out of the game, rather than stomping your enemy. Whereas like when you're winning, you can practice like Baron deploys, or like Baron setups, or like buff contests and stuff like this. It has to shift. You can't be contesting, like you can't be setting up for Baron when you're like 5k behind. So you always need a goal for the player to be working towards, and that helps that helps separate them and makes them focus inwards on like how they're playing, rather than externally on what the enemy team are doing. You just try and make it about them.
Yeah, you're actually doing something that I actually read in reading this like poker book recently. So this poker coach, and one of the tactics he used with his clients is, let's just say, and this is actually what I did. I failed to do this, sorry, as a coach. And it's only something I learned recently. Was what most teams do is that they only ever focus on improving on their strengths, like how to get better at winning. You know, like when we're ahead, how do we get ahead, and all this stuff. But the whole other, and for SoloQ, this is like literally when ahead, how do I translate leads? Is even just like taking good trades, things like that. But there are games, as we know, you get behind, and there's really not much you can do.
Yeah.
So the other end of improving is improving your weaknesses, or losing better. Losing gracefully, right? Yeah. And that's what you're doing. I mean, I don't know if it's actively or obviously actively. And it's fascinating because it's a whole nother skill within itself.
Yeah.
It's literally an entire skill. Whether you have to change the way you trade, you have to obviously sacrifice some parts of the map to make another trade elsewhere, things like that. And the thing is, though, and I think kind of similar to what Nathan's question is, have there been times where, I mean, this has been the case for Direwolves, was the case many times, where you go through slumps where it's not your meta, you know, your team's just really struggling to find their identity. People are having champion pool issues. They're a bit off. What do you do as a coach to ensure that it doesn't just drastically go downhill? Like this is, I guess, a combination of multiple things, not just losing scrims.
So first of all, I'll preface it by saying that I think experiencing that happening is something that like everyone, it has to happen at some point.
It's inevitable.
It is inevitable, but the response that you have to it and how you can get people out of it varies considerably depending on the dynamic that you already have established within the team. So I'll say 2 examples from this year. So I came in to this year not confident in my coaching ability whatsoever. So like I had a plan, but I didn't know if it was going to be, if anything was going to work or anything like that. Like I had things that I wanted to teach. I had an idea of how I wanted the environment to be, but I was a coach from OS that a lot of the players hadn't heard about. So I had to so they weren't going to respect me off the bat. That's not what Western culture is like. Like you need to earn respect in Western culture, whereas like it's almost, from what I've heard, is almost given by default to coaches like in Eastern cultures, or maybe. And so I came into a team where the environment had already been established. Sorry, I'll just close that because there's a dog going ballistic. Where an environment had already been established and there was a lot of history between the players. and there was only one player that was new, and I was new as well. And I'll say that the beginning, we didn't even have a honeymoon period. Like the opening set of practice was like I couldn't like. I won't name names because like if they ever watch, like they know who they are, but like they would pause the game after dying like twice or like a few times in lane and just say this scrim's over and just pause the game. And I would just be sitting there like in the other room.
First couple of scrims, like this is like your first day one, day
yeah,
two.
No, this is like the first week this was happening, and
Holy shit!
And I was like, I've just inherited like a time bomb. I was like, this is insane. And then, so I pulled because he like stuff was obviously like going on or whatever. So I just spent a lot of effort and time with people that needed it. And as a team, I would say like, okay, guys, like I would implement rules like we're not FFing before 15 minutes, right? But like you're not going to run it down or whatever if you're having a bad game. Like you're going to be vocal, and I'm going to call you out if you're not being it. Like all these ground rules that I thought would already be there, like I had to take an active effort to implement. And then throughout the split, like there would be times where like people, even after all of this, and we're not FFing, like they'd go 0 for 10 for 0 or whatever, right? And then after the game, I'd just in public say like, did that feel good for you to do? Like, did that feel good to waste everyone's time with this game? And then after that, like they would then have that moment where it's like, wow, I'm being like very, very selfish or whatever. But they had like that visceral reaction to like them getting shit on, like their ego being bruised, and that's how they reacted to it. But after like getting called out, it doesn't really happen again after that.
So is that mental resilience for them? Like just not have default response to FF?
Yeah, if you die, the game isn't over. Like, how self-centered do you have to be to think that? Right? So
I mean, looking at that thing, but again, it's like
but like that's something that you have to teach. That's mature. Right. Like that's part of it, right?
And these were 18.
And I was like that as a player.
That's right.
100%. Right? Like if I died like 3 times to Shan 5 Fantics, I'm like, fuck this game. I'm like, what's the point? They're just better than us. I can't be bothered. And then, and then later on. So the first half of the year, for me this year, we went undefeated. Like we were 18-0, and then we went 2-0 in the playoffs, and then we were up 2-0 in the finals, and then we got reverse swept. Right? So we were like 22-0, and then we were 22-3. And we lost the finals, and we lost our first seed for EU Masters and whatever. The 3 weeks after that were like actually like miserable. The trust with the trust between like the things that we had built up the whole year fell apart. Like the trust between the teammates dissipated just completely. No one took any responsibility for anything anymore. It was like all the positivity and all the constructiveness of the first half of the split seemingly faded away over like the finals into like the next 3 weeks of scrims.
Okay, so this is really interesting. I really want to explore this because then you could also say the foundation that everything was built off was shaky in the first place. You just
you can.
You plopped in the reverse sweep, and then everything goes to
I put that down to my own insecurity as a coach at the beginning. Like when I was establishing the foundations, I wasn't like convincing enough of it, and like all of our success was like snowballed success in that. Everything, as long as we kept winning, everything was going to be okay. But as soon as you come into up against like a roadblock, like it's just doomed.
Yeah, this is what you talked about ages ago in terms of the team culture. I mean, you could talk about this. I mean, so could you perfectly relate this to, let's say, you Chiefs 2016 winning and then 2017 moving into 2017 Chiefs?
Kind of, but I will say that 2016 wasn't smooth for us. On Chiefs.
I mean, any split, even when we win, it's not smooth, but it's smoother than everyone else, right?
True.
It's not as not smooth as come in. Was it 4th in 2017 split 1, right? Or do you think it's the same? Was the same, or it must have been worse, right?
there was okay, so it's like the difference between the end of 2016 and the beginning of 2017. The results during the regular split were relatively similar. So fourth and fourth. The difference was there was this self-belief in 2016 that like no matter where we placed in the regular season that we would win. And then 2017 happens, and for whatever reason, right before like maybe I've tinted this in my mind, and so this isn't exactly accurate, but I thought that we were just going to do the exact same thing. And then playing in those games, I remember Ryomo, like this was like the first time that he played really well, and I was like, oh shit, like I don't have ability in myself. I don't have the confidence in myself at the moment to carry this game. And then I wasn't cognizant enough of a player to put that faith onto the rest of the team. And I was like, oh, if I can't do it, like, we're not going to win. Which was awful retrospectively, but like, is how I thought at the time.
And then, so then after that loss, you know how you said that your team that was just miserable for, was it 2-3 months with Excel Academy?
Yeah, it was probably a month.
Okay, a month.
It was probably like, because it was from the end of our split to the beginning of EU Masters, which was 3-4 weeks, like a month, around that time frame. And during that, I realized that like this overwhelming optimism and stuff that I'd been doing for a lot of the split, where like it's like listening to everyone, whatever, wasn't going to work here because no one was taking any responsibility for anything. So there were like several things that I tried to do to like do it, but it was like everyone hit their breaking point, and then I took everyone outside and we just sat around, and I was like, speak to me, like what's going on in your head, tell me everything that's going on in your head, like all the grievances you have now. And we went around and we
never did that before up until this point.
No. We'd had like honest dialogue with each other, but it was not honest because it was always under the guise of optimism.
Because you guys were winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But it's
so
like
that's not honest, then, is it? They're literally
it's not right. But then as you were saying, like the foundation was incorrect. Like I wasn't confident, or like maybe I didn't display enough honesty in terms of criticism earlier on in the season. Whatever it was, like I actually you can trace it back to the beginning and like how it wasn't as strong as it should have been. And then eventually we had that talk, like things improved a little bit, but we needed to do, it wasn't enough. I remember, and then the actual, one of the turning points that we had was we watched like this Dota 2 documentary about like, I can't remember the guy's name, but like the guy that won the back-to-back TI Cups, and how he like was in it for years, overcame adversity, whatever. Sometimes you just need like a good story or whatever to unite you and remember why you're doing it and to give you perspective. And I think that's what they got watching it. And the other thing was that we all did it together, so they all had this shared reflection of themselves on the screen. And they all saw, if they couldn't verbalize it, they saw the insecurities and everything displayed, reflected in themselves together watching a documentary. And then that bonded
all you guys together,
gave them perspective.
That's the key thing there, is that you always think like sitting back, every other team's all sunshine and rainbows, right? It's like they beat us, they're better than us, that means they must not have all the problems we have.
Actually, no.
Once you realize they do, and it's sometimes even worse. Like, I mean, again, looking at us direwolves, Curtis, I mean, we were just a mess. We were just a band-aid solution after band-aid solution, right? But we're still winning, right?
And undefeated for like 2 years.
Players get in their heads all the time. It's like, this guy slurps this sloop. Go back to your analogy. I still hate that. That affects Scrim somehow, you know, because this guy's just annoying me more than someone else, which is super interesting that you bring that up. It's like, not until you realize other people have the same problems you have, you're like, it's like a weight's lifted off your shoulder. It's like, same amount of.
But then I feel like this whole thing kind of comes down to like, and this is like this is where things get messy to me, because you got to bring it back to the goal. what's your goal as a coach? Is it to get the best possible results in that split or in that year, or is it to actually value that player's or that team's performance over the long run? Because sometimes, and as we know, you do those quote unquote conflict sessions or honest dialogue, whatever it is.
On them, right? They're like an
They're a crutch. Yeah, they are.
No, but they open up a whole can of worms sometimes.
Yeah, they do.
They
which is why going. Oh yeah, which is why going into split 2 though, it was like, because these are the things that have been building up for the whole split. It's why going into the second split, I had like every couple of weeks, like we would like actively check in, like with one another, as like a preemptive kind of thing. And I would or like in the one-on-ones, I'd say, talk to me. Like, so in the one-on-ones, it would not only be like the stuff that we want to focus on to get you a better player. I was like, tell me the grievances you have with people now. I was like, what's pissing you off? Are you pissed off? Like, is everything fine? Like you like, and then it's whether or not they trust you enough to open up to you.
A question: do you feel like this is even worth doing? Because like, I mean, I've done this. I mean, I had done this. I've done both sides. I've done let's just pretend we're all sunshine and rainbows when we all fucking hate each other.
Yeah.
Literally, like hatred.
Like literally just the game. We don't care about anything else.
I don't even care about you. I just want to win, and I will do whatever it takes to win. Or do we want to like really, let's focus on building actual relationships and like, okay, in order to get into this, because a lot of the time, what happens is that the way players interpret it, in my experience, was, Simon here is telling me I can be honest about everything. And the first thing that pops into mind, fuck, I hate it when you do that. They'll say it to another, I fucking hate it when like you do this. And it's something that's so minuscule that the player feels personally attacked. And it's like, why are you talking about what I eat for breakfast? Or why are you talking about the way I sit on my chair or the way I talk when like you're just losing lane every scrim? Like it just becomes like this, like, it's like, why even bring it up? Like, is there a point in which you've thought to yourself where we would have had better results if we had never brought this up? Has this been a thought that has ever come to your mind? Kind of like the can of worms.
I will say that I preface it by I will like, when we did have the talk, I did set some parameters to it. It wasn't a
say anything you want.
It wasn't like a say anything. All right.
It wasn't a say anything you want. It was a like
within reason.
I'm like, tell me your thoughts about like why you think we're losing every game.
Right.
I was like, the questions that I throw to them, I've specifically tailored so that you're within guidelines.
That's better.
Right?
That's better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've had this. In your time in order, right? You and Chiefs, and you would have had plenty of these experiences yourself. Actually, and this actually leads me to one of my favorite. This is what I was waiting for. This one specific question was, what was your toughest lesson as a coach?
As a coach.
Toughest lesson.
Relinquishing control. I was like, the hardest part of it was, or it was twofold. So it was like general inadequacy, because I didn't know, it wasn't like imposter syndrome or anything. I just didn't actually understand the effect I was having. I was like, if I wasn't here, like during the first split, for example, I was like, if I wasn't here, would they have just won anything anyway? Like, am I actually doing anything? Right? I'm like, am I wasting my time being here? So, and then eventually understanding that no, I'm having an effect. I'm having an impact, like in what they're talking about during the game, or like how they're talking to one another, or like how they've adjusted their behavior to be more like empathetic towards one another, or more mature, or whatever. Like whatever it was, I was like, yes, that is fun. So that was something that I struggled with for like the first half a little bit. And then also the loss of control that you have, where it's like during the slump, I was like, I don't know what to do to fix this. Or like during a draft and like a game, I'd be like, okay, we've got the things that we want. We know the game, like we know our plan. That's it. Like I've done everything I can. I was like, now can they perform? Like, can we just perform on the day? Like, I don't know. And learning how to not stress about that, because I was like, okay, yep, we've got the draft we want. Like, we know all the like we understand the fundamentals of the game. Are we going to remember that well enough? And it's like, there's no point thinking about at the time. There's no point thinking about all the things that you could have done leading up to it differently. It's like you're just in the moment then, and like you just have to live in it. Obviously, afterwards you can go back and like we did just now, I can talk about how the foundations at the beginning of the year weren't strong enough. But at that point, I'm like, I just have to focus. I just have to be present. That's very difficult because I do tend to overanalyze like quite a bit, like the implications of things in the past leading to things in the future and stuff like that. And sometimes you just need to be present, and that was something that I struggled with a fair bit as well at the beginning, especially.
Right. And I'm sure you've also had the opportunity to play a lot of EU SoloQ. What's your experiences with EU SoloQ coming from OS?
So so actually when I got there, it was pretty good. I was like, but I also had this thing where I was like, I need to prove that I'm still decent at the game so that they can see my rank, and then, not like actually take what I say is relatively.
Was that Challenger? Were you expecting to get Challenger, Grandmaster?
I got Grandmaster, and then I was like, okay, good enough. Like, I don't want to now. It's like I'm going to put too much time into playing SoloQ and not focusing on what I need to do. Like my skill set's changed. I can't put as much time into this as like requires for me to eke out the little bit and get into Chall. Like I need to focus on them. Like the 5 players become my priority rather than my rank. And then when I had a break again during the middle of the year, I found that I put so much time into League, like almost more time than I think more time than when I was a player into League, that I had almost zero desire to play. And when I did like play the occasional game every day, I just get there were 5 days in a row I would say to myself, I'm just going to log in and play until I lose. And I would log in, and the first game 5 days in a row there would be someone AFK or running it down, and I would just be like, okay, that's it for the day. But generally speaking, the quality, the bar is higher. Like if you just did a side by side like Diamond 4, Diamond 4, Diamond 3, Diamond 3, all the way up to Chall, like the bar is higher across EUS compared to OS.
Definitely.
It's like playing against mid laners in Grandmaster or like Master. I would say like top 10 Chall, like OS. Like they could get there just based on like laning mechanics, or based on map understanding or whatever it was. I thought that the bar was higher and more competitive. Matchmaking was like very fickle for whatever reason over there. It was like challenges would be placed with like diamond ones, like something went haywire. But like generally speaking, the level of competition was like better than OS. Yeah.
Speaking of SoloQ now, so this is what I've been thinking a bit about since all the NA rosters have been coming out. If we think back to our time, so right now in LCS, FBI, Rays, this is like the 80 carries. I mean, Destiny and Lost was actually even potentially considered for an LCS position. At the end of the day, we all came from the same, so we played all the same time, and this is when we were really good, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's just think about that. Literally from OS, like these, at the end of the day, these players, even King, Calvin, number 1 Academy, Fudge, okay, you rank from SoloQ, we all were in the same environment in our little island in OS in Australia, and somehow, I mean, let's get into the reasons. Why is it that they're taking NA LCS spots? I mean, and now we're talking about NA SoloQ versus O SoloQ and versus EU, right? Is NA just that significantly worse? I mean, you've played on NA a bit, haven't you, Simon, when you went over to Korea? I mean, how interesting is that? Is that OS is literally, there's a lot of players who got their start in SoloQ, and it's you. I mean, even you just said it right there, Sam. SoloQ's not bad in comparable to EU, but they get in LCS positions. Or are they all just anomalies? Is it just? But
no. They're not. They're not anomalies. It's like there's just an elite class of players on every server, and it's like the elite level that you have on OS is just much smaller compared to EUS.
Just the amount.
Yeah, the amount of very, very talented players in EU is just so much higher than OS, and it's like. All these players across the world, it's like at this elite level, like you like obviously there's rankings amongst them as well, but like to break into it, it's like you only have a fraction of the population in each server. And it's like these top like 10, 15 players in OS are good enough to compete in the NALCS. Like they are. It's just like it's just understanding concepts and like understanding the competitive environment there and like the pace at which they play is the only thing they need to learn. Like for the most part, like their wave understanding and everything like that is pretty much on par. And that also comes down to like the availability of tools that you have now as well. So like Proview, which hasn't actually come back in, but like that I think that went a long way to addressing a lot of the if you knew how to implement stuff from it, that went a long way to addressing like a lot of imbalances between like pro players in regions. I think Proview was insane. I think it's one of the best.
How do you use Proview?
Dip between a player like as when I was a player or like now?
Yeah, when you were a player.
So I would look at it depended on the part of the game that I thought that I was lacking in. So if I thought my laning was bad with a specific champion or whatever, then I would go and just like copy paste what somebody else was doing into like my own gameplay. I actually think I struggled a lot towards like the end of my playing career with like the identity that I had because I didn't know what was good anymore. I had a lot of like self-doubt. But something that I could always do was just copy another player and like just adopt how they thought about the game and just have that like for a game. And so yeah, laning phase, I looked at like there was a point where I thought that what we were doing around securing farm on a side lane was pretty bad. So I would look at how like when the mid laner would go catch side waves or like and how they would play around the fog or like how support jungle would like create a buffer zone for them to be able to farm in safely or stuff like that. So trying to understand concepts without necessarily verbalizing them was like the same, like generally my whole career, but that's basically what I was getting from Proview.
Right.
And coach, you said coach, and you asked whether between you as a player how you use it and a coach, how do you use it now?
Now I just look about how they utilize fog. And this might, I don't know if this sounds like ridiculous or whatever, but like when I was coaching, like, and Joey, I kind of saw it from Joey as well, Young Buck, is that, have you guys ever read Sun Tzu's Art of War? Like Curtis, you have, right? Yeah, because I remember we've spoken about it, and I don't know if you have, Nathan. But it's like there's so many concepts when you legitimately like break it down and everything. And Curtis, I think we've actually had this conversation before that like you can apply in League. And so what I tried to do when I was watching Proview as a coach was apply rather than like going into it trying to just learn things, try and look like and just looking at like the mid laner and watch him walk around and like see everything that he's doing. Rather watch it from kind of like a holistic view and the patterns across the games that like these players that were at a higher level, like all the these teams that were at a higher level were doing, and see like whether or not across like a whole bunch of games, you can get it from replays as well, but it's just nice to see like from a player's perspective, the patterns across the games, and then like why are these patterns effective, and why aren't these patterns effective? Like, could I like pinpoint almost like a pattern over like gameplay that leads to you losing a game or winning a game or whatever, and seeing what kind of concepts you can just draw out of that. Fog was something that I was looking at a lot, and like implied pressure. I always used to talk about our jungler, like Schrodinger's jungler. Like if you don't know where he is, everyone has to play like he's everywhere, for example, or you all disrespect him simultaneously. And it's about like, it's like, do you respect? Are you a team that's going to respect the jungler, or are you a team that's just going to not respect the jungler? But you all have to be aligned on that. And it's like, and the implied pressure that brings, and everything like that. So that was kind of cool watching Proview for those reasons as well, like the players and how they respond to Fog.
What do you think made the best teams at Worlds this year? Like, what did Damwon do better than everybody else?
First of all, I didn't think that Suning. I thought Suning were really interesting because even going into the finals didn't rate them that highly. I don't know why, but like I just thought a lot of the stuff that they did was very, like, there was almost the way that they played almost had no finesse. It was like they just brute forced a lot of things, and it just seemed to work out a lot more of the time than it didn't. And with Damwon, it was like whatever force was behind Damwon, whether it was the players or the coaching staff or a combination, it was like they had completely deconstructed the meta. And it was like, and the way that like they had answers to things that other teams were doing was something that no other team had. So like going up against Suning and like the Akali pick, or sorry, G2 and like the Akali pick that was pretty prominent before finals, I think. And like Akali just seemed to be like the champion. If the player was feeling it on the day, like the champion looked really, really good. And there was like, and everyone's like, okay, the game's determined whether or not like this Akali player has a good game or not. Damwon, when the other team picked Akali, it's like, it's so easy, but like Damwon just picked Lulu top. And like no other team did that. And Lulu just completely cucks Akali for the entire game. And then the way that they were playing it around like G2's creativity was so relentless. It was like, do you guys remember that play that Caps had in like that top rush where he was looking to pick off a jungler and Showmaker's just sitting at the tier 1? Like, I don't know if you guys like this is kind of like what they were so incredibly calculated with their next move, or what they always knew what the enemy team was going to be doing. It's like the general understanding. I think it's like the general understanding and the way they deconstructed the meta was better than any other team at the tournament.
Because sometimes I think Dopa said in his post, he said something about how the best team at Worlds isn't necessarily the best, most skilled players. It's their ability to have, they're the best in that meta. The best at thriving or figuring out the meta first. Because it was the same for us at Direwolves. The biggest reason we got stomped internationally, it actually was very rarely individual skill. Like, yes, there was an element of that, but when we came to international, we weren't equipped with the skills to be able to adapt or create a meta, or even create or adapt to the meta, or create our identity within the meta. What happened, we go into scrims, we'd be like, oh, shit, what we played in OS doesn't work anymore. And everyone just starts going haywire. I'm trying to figure out, okay, all the
strong... You're just reacting constantly, right? It's like, okay, so scrim number 1, this beat us. Let's try this now. React. Scrim number 3. Okay, maybe we won. That worked. It's just like you're basically just reacting to
and you can't react.
You're not coming up again. I mean, maybe that's just confidence for EUW being the number 1 team in Korea.
Yeah, but like, so then it's a question of like, what is a meta? Like, what is meta, right? And it's like, how do you define it? And it's like, is it the thing that just works best in the game at the current time? Is that the meta?
What's most effective tactics available?
Yeah, but the game, like if you played on this patch or like on the World's patch for like a year, Like, do you think that the meta would be would shift considerably?
I think it would. Yeah.
There's always a counter to a counter and the counter to a counter.
Because it's just going to be continuously evolving, and it's like, so dumb one, just understand the game more. That's basically what meta is. It's like understanding like the game and your role in the game. And they understood it more than the enemy team. Because it's like, given enough time, like you can counter it. But they just have greater understanding of the game. And it's like, or they understand their opponents well enough to understand how they play the game and create an effective counter to it.
It feels like they really understood Suning. Like they figured them out. Like, there was nothing Suning could have done.
But that Suning pick, I think it was like the Jacks came in first 3 on blue side, like blind. And I was like, this guy's like very determined to play the game this specific way. Like, or the team is very determined to play the game like this. And dumb one know that. And they're like, okay, we're just gonna, like, we know, like, you have to pick this now or else we're like, you guys are cooked. So we're just gonna, like, you can take it and we just have the counter to it and like that's it.
Well, they just like neutralize it and then play someone else.
Yeah, it's like they understand their opponents and they understand the game to a better level than anyone else in the tournament. It's a very cop-out answer because you can say that about almost every single team that's won Worlds, but that's what wins you Worlds. It's like FPX versus G2 last year. Is like we all thought going into it that G2 were going to win. Oh, I did. I don't know about you guys, but I really thought that G2 were going to win that, and then FPX proved that they just understand G2 or they understand the meta more than G2 does, and that's it.
Do you feel like I actually disagree that they understood the meta? What I believe is
or had better game understanding.
Well, I believe that they had a deeper understanding of what won games, but I think more specifically, they had a much clearer identity as a team. Like, so you know how you said this a while ago in this video, in this podcast, you're saying how you want to get if you want to be predictable to your teammates.
Yep.
So this is my philosophy with coaching. My philosophy in coaching is my keywords alignment. Okay. My entire goal as a coach is I have 2 goals. I want to bring about alignment with all 5 players. So my job is in every review, I want to ask questions or figure out ways to get players seeing the same things or at least understand why they made those decisions. Now, so alignment is my word. And then the other part of that with my coaching is my goal is to maximize and juice the amount of learning out of every single game, because over the course of the long run, if you're getting 80% of the learning out of a game comparatively to 60% or 50% of the learning, which is, obviously I'm just throwing arbitrary numbers here, which we're never going to be able to know, comparatively to another team through having high quality review, high quality discussion, better quality questions asked, more efficient reviews, we are going to be better or improve at a much faster rate. And it's exponential. Like you get better and then you get better at getting better. And then you're getting better at a higher proportion of what you were before in a way. I'm not articulating.
No. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
snowball effect. It's like just being aligned helps everything. Your scrims, your reviews, your game stage.
Exactly. So alignment is my thing. Now, what I believe FPX in that year were very good at is they were completely aligned. They had complete alignment. They knew their identity both as 5 individual players and as a team. And every player on that team knew their role every single game. They knew exactly what they had to do in every single game. They knew what Doinby was going to do on that champion. When he beat Galio, him and what's the jungler's name again? Tien. Like they knew how to play that. Like even if it was subpar on paper to G2's composition, they knew how to do what their champions did way better than G2.
But isn't that just game understanding though?
Well, so you're saying that there's more, they understood their identity, and it might not be them understanding the game, but it's like because a bad plan executed well is better than a good plan executed poorly.
Exactly. That's my theory. And I think that was from a military book as well. A bad plan executed great is better than a great plan executed poorly. And I feel like they internalized that. And I actually believe, yes, we could say that maybe Galio and that style of push mid, roam sides was like a very solid strategy in that meta. But I just can't agree that was
solely
was the sole, or at least I'll say that's one factor, but I don't even think it was the major contributing factor to them winning. I think it was the more underlying concept behind it, which was they were complete and utterly aligned.
Yeah.
And what I mean by alignment is it's less about game understanding. I mean, that's an element of it, but it's more about, okay, Doimby's going to do this on paper. It may even be inefficient, and people can even criticize it as the incorrect play, because people always criticize the way Doimby played, and especially his landing phase. But it was a specific way. It brought about a specific game pace. It brought about, like, he would take trades where he would lose 40% of his HP and only take 20%, but he would make the game sloppy. He would do some crazy shit. And
but then it's like, okay, so the intention behind it, it's like, so why is he doing it, right? Obviously, there's a plan, right? And the plan has to come from understanding, like, yes, his role within the game, but what it also, him playing like that, does to the state of the game, which is understanding the game. So it's like, if you have like this specific identity and this specific, because I agree with you with like a good plan executed badly, etc., because that's the same thing that I tried to harp on about as well. I was like, if guys, I like, honestly, a lot of the time, like, I don't care what you do as long as you do it together, and then we can review like the decision making process. But if you like aren't doing it together and it's just shit, like, there's nothing to review. Like, you don't even try it, right?
Team fight, yeah.
So I agree with that, but it's like always like, there's always intention. There was, yes, intention to FPX's gameplay and everything like that. But it was like, the reason that they were doing that was because they were comfortable in their game understanding and what their effect on the game was.
What that brought about.
And that's where they were comfortable. And that's where they understood the game better than G2. It's like, I'm gonna skip this wave and I'm gonna TP from like that first play that happened in the final where Caps was playing Pike, and Doimby was playing like Galio or Rumble or something. No, Nort. He was playing Nort, and he TP'd he did the half roam TP into topside, right? Because he's like, I understand that saving these 10 seconds with the teleport is going to like increase the pace of this game, like, or whatever it brought about, more than like what you understand in taking like the full rotation up or whatever. So him understanding that and playing at that level and playing at that game pace just means that he has a better understanding, and his teammates have like a better understanding of the identity that they have within like the game. Because it's all like what the player brings to the game is like, it's like how can you mold the game? Like, what do you bring to League? Because it's the same map. It's like, what are you bringing about to change the state of the map to make it more difficult for them and less difficult for you? And I think like the way that like they think and everything, I think it almost always comes down to game understanding. And like, and it's like game under because that comes hand in hand with like the identity you have. Because if you understand the game to be like this, you are going to play like this within your parameters of understanding.
And you can't be aligned if you don't understand the underlying concept that's at play.
Yeah.
What are you aligning around? There has to be
exactly. It has to be something. It's like if we want to like get this, it's like how far ahead can we think? It's like, we want to be able to contest like this second Raptor camp. So if we throw off and like force the jungler to catch top, then we get a reset and we're at jungle, like we're at this camp on respawn and he's in base or something like that. So we're going to take the dive top, force him to respond, and then blah, 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 blah. It's like, maybe that's reading too much into it, but like they've done it. They've played at that level, or like they play at that pace so often that they more often than not know like the consequences of their actions. Whereas like it's up to G2 to determine the game at their own pace, which they failed to do in the finals.
So you know how we're talking a lot here about like team identity, and I remember earlier on you were talking about, this player's identity. You know, you have an identity as a player, whether it's you're talking about strengths of the play. One of the first things you tried to do on your team was you said something about identifying strengths or identifying
how people play. Like
How people play.
Where people like, it's like you can see like by how vocal people are or how often like they take aggressive trades or whatever. It's like you can kind of like get an idea for how people want to play the game, and like that's their strength, how they want to play the game.
So how is there a point in which you're a coach and you see a player and you're like, okay, we may have success playing this way, but it's just not going to last. At some point, the meta's going to shift, and like, let's take a mid laner, for example. Let's just take Power of Evil. This is why I'm actually a big critic of Power of Evil. Right? Yes, he may be an amazing mage player. He can be the amazing Orianna, Syndra, Azir, great. But at some point, aren't you just capped as a pro player? Where like you come up at some point, yes, you may win NA, but you're going to come up against like Caps, you're going to come up against Knight or Rookie or one of these players, and they're going to whip out an Akali, they're going to play Aurelia mid, they're going to play Yasuo Gragas, they're going to play LeBlanc, whatever they're going to, an Echo. Do you feel like the game has evolved to a point where you can't afford to be one-dimensional? You can't afford to have like a style. You can't afford to like remember Sharon used to talk to me about this. He doesn't believe in styles. And he was inspired by Bruce Lee and stuff like that. There's a thing is like styles. You're going to be able to adapt, and like the game is it evolves at such a fast pace that your job as a professional player is to adapt. What are your thoughts on this for players nowadays?
I think that it has to do a lot with so I think we've already established, based on everything that we've spoken about, that like knowledge doesn't equate to like gameplay, right? Or it's like, so I feel like I have a pretty strong understanding of the game, but I probably won't hit Challenger again, right? Like I don't have the drive, I don't have the time. There's other elements, other factors.
Not to say you couldn't. I think you could hit EU and Challenger if you put the time and effort.
Maybe, but that's definitely not happening. So the other thing is that when we talk about like Power of Evil, for example, do you think that he doesn't understand how to play or how to pressure or how to influence the game well enough as an assassin to warrant him putting time, like to, in his own mind, for him to warrant time putting into learning like that more, like, or what it brings or whatever? Do you think that he thinks like, and this is because this is an old way of thinking, like this, like having a style in the game and not being able to like pull out the right champion for the right moment and stuff like that. Is his understanding of how to play the game as an assassin just not up to par? Or because when he plays against one, right, he seems to understand the capabilities of what the assassins can do. He seems to understand that like, if I walk into this top lane, like I'm going to lose the one-on-one, or like this is what an assassin brings to a team fight and stuff like that. But he seems to be able to navigate it from the mage's perspective. So is it an understanding thing, or is he uncomfortable? Is he uncomfortable in that position? Like, does he have to think more about the game and the implications of like what he's playing and how to affect the game as an assassin rather than a mage? Because that's interesting. Because I don't know.
It's got to be he's uncomfortable. I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, again, there's a time and I mean, maybe he's so confident in his being able to just win lane versus like an assassin, even as like a mage, that it feels like there's no need to. But I mean, it's proven they are limited as a team. But maybe he's uncomfortable. I mean, he has to be uncomfortable because
he's definitely uncomfortable. But the way this is the way I view it. This is a somewhat pessimistic way of viewing it. But the way I'm viewing it, I don't know him personally. He knows that it's a risk. Let's just say he spends an entire off season trying to redefine himself,
his money and his livelihood, right? Yeah.
So view that. Imagine being in his position. You're in a good spot. You're valued in the NALCS. You know you're seen as a decent mid laner. You have a clear identity. What's worked in the past? You know it's going to most likely work again. I think he's comfortable where he is as his current identity. He knows that he could maybe push himself and like in the offseason spend like 3 months just completely only playing like, you know, Echo and Zed, whatever it is, and like completely redefine himself as a player. But it's like, well, that's going to come at a cost. I might lose my confidence. I might, I might not even just want to put myself through those 3 months. I could just be better at the champs I already play, whatever it is. To be honest, that's where I think it is. And that's actually why I'm the biggest critic, because I think if you want to win worlds, I don't think you can be that sort of player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that like what you're talking about is the transition between dream to career. And it's like when you stop, like when you think about the game, when you go into it, and it's like what do you when you start your path to becoming a pro player or whatever, it's like I want to win worlds or I want to get a stable career out of this. And it's like you can have the dream of going to worlds and everything like that, but then for whatever reason, like you become more pessimistic. You realize like maybe you don't have the skill or whatever. It's like. And Nathan, you touched on it as well. It's like, why would you take the risk? Why would you risk jeopard? Like your thinking has now switched from what you perceive to be like this naive dream of winning worlds to I'm making like $700,000 a year in the NALCS, right? Like I'm pretty happy with that, and I don't want to lose that. And I think that, and maybe like maybe that's not it, and maybe there's something completely different, like I don't know, whatever, but like that makes a lot of sense to me. And at the point that he's at now, it's like he's like a lot of the players now in NA are like career players. Like the chance of an NA player winning worlds is very, very slim.
Like, think about all of them. Like,
it's like duration length.
Pro Belter, Golden Glue, like all of them.
We could put this to our experiences as our players and us going overseas. The first couple of times you went, you probably thought the first time we went to MSI, we thought we're pretty convinced we could make it out of groups. As time went on, we knew how difficult it was, right? Can you relate to that, Simon? The first couple of times you went over to wildcards overseas?
Yeah, the first WCG doesn't really count because like I saw that as more of an experience rather than something that I was genuinely going to win because whatever it is what it like that's how I thought about it. But like the first wildcard I went to, I didn't know how we stacked up. Honestly, it was like
dream mode or career mode.
At that point, I was dream mode. I was like, at the dream mode though was like I want to go to worlds. Like I want to go. My dream was realistic. I was like, I don't want to win worlds. I want to go to worlds, right? So, and then once I did that, I think I would have been content. And then maybe like my drop off would have happened like a lot earlier in my career as well. I don't know if it would. I don't know. It's like it's too hard to say.
Yeah, hard to say.
But eventually, it went from not making it, and then losing domestically. And I was like, I don't think I had an honest conversation with myself for like a couple of years. I don't think I was like, I don't think I came to the realization, like what goal? Like I'm just playing. Like what am I like? This. I'm like, what am I doing?
Is that career mode? Like, because could Powerleave will be the exact same mindset you are. He's just playing. Like he has no dream anymore, and he's just in that.
Difference is, I think it's like the money. Whereas, like, I don't think the money in OS was ever high enough to justify just doing that. It's like, it's like you. I think OS you always had to be a dreamer to be in it, and if you didn't, like, I didn't think there was a point.
Yeah. Well, it's so easy for us to just sit back and say, "Oh yeah, Power of Evil," and he's got like this money literally at his fingertips. Like it's so easy for us to like criticize him because we're not in that position.
Yeah, 100%.
What would we do if we're in that position?
Yeah.
You know?
I know it's like it would be like, but we all came from OS where it was like you have to dream in this to make it viable for you. Otherwise, like, what's the point?
That's right. Yeah.
So like we've got inherent biases, of course, because like. That's how we came through it, and like, and it is, and like, it's like we can almost take the moral high ground, but it's just because we didn't experience, like, we didn't come into it thinking, and he probably started thinking that he was going to win worlds, and then it gets to a point where he's like, the amount of effort that I like have to put in to learn a completely different style of the game or like how to impact the game in a different way, isn't worth jeopardizing like my career. Which is 100% valid. It's like
it's very logical.
It is what it is, and like I having that realization and having that, the ability to come to that conclusion, I think is pretty admirable if like he's done it. Because I agree, I don't think that like you can win worlds playing one specific way or having a small champ pool or whatever. Because it's like, maybe if the stars align and it's like literally perfect for you, yes, but like then you're just gambling on, like, you're not taking fate into your own hands.
What is your goal? What do you? I mean, you may not even have one. I don't want to put the pressure on you. You don't have to answer. Yeah, but like, I know obviously I can. When I saw that you moved to coaching position, it made sense to me. But yeah, what are you aiming to get out of this whole experience?
Well, one of the big thing is like I never made it to the height that I wanted to reach it as a player. Like I never did make it to Worlds or anything like that. And it's not like the dreams carried over to coaching and that I want to make it to Worlds, or I think that like having a goal like that is, anyway, it's what I really want to do is like I want to prove to myself that like the knowledge and the expertise that I have is worth something. Is like and basically it's like I want to be a coach in the LEC or LCS, and I want to see if I can function in that kind of environment. Because it's like, I think and this maybe this sounds stupid, but it's like I feel like I've gotten to this point in my life where I think about goals in like there will be, I don't want to, it's not like Crown where he wins Worlds and then he has nothing and then he enters like a depression, right? Like that's pretty sad, because like you've reached what you wanted to reach and now you realize like you don't have anything, and or like you have nothing else to strive for, and you're like, did I peak at 23? Like, is that it for me? And like now you've got the rest of your life, and it's like I think that's something that I didn't really have as a player, but it's like now I understand that there's the rest of my life, and it's like I'm going to be happy reaching like this status in League, like a coach of like LEC or LCS, and do that for a few years, and then I'm going to be happy moving on.
So you're thinking about the what's next?
Yeah. And like I will give everything I want to that, because like that will help me in my life. Like my life takes priority. It's like if I can prove to myself that I can do this, then the next step, I know that I will be able to do that, whatever it is. It's like I want to build. It almost sounds kind of corny, but I want to take this as like inspiration for myself for my my life.
You do next.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very healthy approach though, because the skills that you're going to develop, as you're probably finding out as a coach as well, apply to everything.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, and I do want to be I want to be successful in this. I really, really do. Like, something that I'm going into next year, like short-term goals, is like top 4 EU Masters for the first split, and then by the second split, I want us to. I want the team. I don't care if we. Like, I want to be top 2, but I don't care if we win, if we do everything well. Like, I just want to get better. I just want to do better, like, as a coach than I did this year. And I think I know what to do.
So again, bringing it back to building that foundation from the get-go.
Yep.
Are you involved in the recruitment process and stuff at all?
Yes. Yeah, I was.
So that's obviously going to be a bit different as well. I mean, that's maybe another whole bit of lessons for you there as well.
How many coaches do you have, or is it you and an assistant coach, or how?
So kind of looking at that at the moment, but no, it's mainly me, and then I had like an analyst that was kind of in between LEC and LCS.
Right.
But like priority LEC, sorry, not LEC, priority LEC, and then academy, right? So if he had spare time, I would ask him to like look at things for us, but if he didn't, I understood and whatever. So yeah, it was just me this year, and we also had head of performance, but also LEC prior, and yeah, that was the structure.
Did you guys work out of the office?
Yeah, we had an office until COVID lockdown.
Right. And
what do you think is the best, if you could literally, if you had unlimited resources, unlimited money, what is the best coaching staff you could possibly build? What would that look like?
You'd probably so head coach for like macro. I don't know how many coaches you would need to like so that I could not be distracted with like the nitty gritty of like the laning stuff. So like I could just continuously focus on like pushing ourselves like ebb and flow, but like maybe like one or two like laning styled coaches, one or two analysts, an assistant coach as well. So you'd have a team of like 6 or 7, I think, and that would probably be the most ideal setup.
Do you think it's necessary to have a positional coach for every single role? You said 1 or 2 for lanes.
I think a lot of the skills that you get from lanes can be transferred across. So like I like top and mid, for example, have very similar, like the matchups change depending on the length of the lane, but the way that you control the waves and stuff like that is kind of similar. If you have someone that can think like that is at a high level that can think about it like in terms of like the different nuances between them, you could have one person doing 2, like you can. In the same way that like I think that jungle and support become very similar roles like later on in the game and not so much early, but it's like the way that you control areas of the map comes a lot through like those 2 roles. So there's skills that are transferable between people, between roles. But if you really need someone to like talk about the nuances of the lane, like I feel like a player could like almost already understands these. I don't think that you need. I don't think that you need one for every role, to be honest. But if in an ideal world, if you had unlimited resources, yes, like sure, like a personal tutor for every role would be great. But
so how does that differ to in like traditional sport in say NFL? You would have like a quarterback coach. You would have a coach for every role. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what would that look like?
Well, again, Simon said that he thinks they can transfer. It's like
I think
like, do you think let's say you, Curtis, you're like, so Simon's obviously been more of a head coach in terms of bigger picture stuff, but you've been more on positional coach, Curtis. Do you think you could teach top to the same level you can teach mid or even
no
close?
Way. Not even close.
And why is that?
I think I just think, I can't comment because I have worked with high elo challenger EU players, but yeah, the importance is in the devil's in the details. And as you probably know, Simon, right? Let's just say you're very, very good at what are your OG champion, like Aurelion Sol or something, or even like a Zillion or something.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, there was something that you know very well. Yes, it's largely the player's responsibility to really get into these details, but in regards to really, really refining both, the way you play out, not just the trades, but the way you want to bring out a certain situation in a game on certain champions. Like with Galio, you don't want it to be a very slow, drawn out game. Ideally, you want a lot more skirmishes. You want things to happen. There are little details in the lane or things that you can do to bring about or increase the likelihood, this is my theory, increase the likelihood of X events happening. I can't do that for any other lane. Yes, like you said, the underlying lane fundamentals are basically the same with top. It's still a lane, it's a wave management, same laning stuff. But I don't know the matchups well enough and the champions in detail enough to give really actionable, specific coaching for a top lane at the highest level. Yes, I could probably do that for a Diamond or Master Demon Grandmaster, but when it comes to like the elite, if I don't know those little details, it's very difficult for me. Now, there are different ways to coach. Like I can ask better quality questions and allow them to figure it out themselves. There's that style of coaching as well. Just in my own experiences, understanding the matchups to a granular level and this understanding the exact game pace of that champion once given the champions in the game, how that champion translate leads, the minute details in team fights and skirmishing, the way all these little things. I think pay dividends, and I think that adds consistency to your gameplay.
I understand. I do understand what you're saying, but I think that if you applied the same thought processes to how you look at mid lane matchups to other to top lane, I think you'd find that you can actually do that. If you so the problem, I think that the thing that I disagree with what you're saying is that then you're putting a finite cap on your coach, because matchups will change all the time, and it's depending on item builds, depending on maybe something gets I don't know, whatever, right? Something skill gets slightly reworked and the matchup changes or whatever, right? You're now unless the coach is playing at a that kind of level as well, where they're learning and being able to impart lessons
they have to be.
Right? Yeah, it's if they're playing at that level, then why aren't they the thing at coaching? I always thought coaching was more about as you said, alignment, conceptualizing things, etc., rather than being able to actually pound for pound just demonstrate what what's supposed to happen in the matchup, because you can do it yourself, you can replicate it as well. I think that being able to understand your example with Galio, increasing game pace, for example, it's there are champions on top lane that want to increase game pace as well, and what you do as Galio, you can almost do in the same way in top lane. It's those. That's what I mean by the transferable skills.
Same.
Yeah, the concepts are the same. The way to achieve it is different, but you can put that on, you can talk about that with the players, because it's how you can give the question to the player. How do you want to increase the pace of how do you want to create more opportunities to impact jungle, right? What do you need to do to the wave to do that? Think about a champion that you do that on and apply it to this champion. And it's I think that's what I'm talking about by the transferable skills from between the lanes, rather than the mechanical details, which I think get lost through the game's evolution. Because the Aurelia, Aurelia Fiora matchup isn't the same now as it was in season whatever, because the champions have both been changed. So it's I don't think that you can expect the coaches to go learn the nuances of the matchup to the same level, to the exactly the same level as the players. It's what the coach is trying, what I think the coach should be doing in a positional thing, in a positional coaching position, is saying okay, Fiora wants to try and keep the other person in the lane for as long as possible. This person wants to get out from the lane as long as possible. In this other matchup where this thing is similar, that we can talk about that. How can you apply it to this? How can we problem solve this together? That's kind of how I look at positional coaching, more so than the full detail of it, I suppose.
I still can't see how a positional coach could understand that many matchups, even to the level you're talking about between top and mid. I still can't see it, because think about Fiora. Okay, think about a top lane champion pool. Let's say across a season they play 10 champions, maybe across an entire season to a pretty high level.
Yeah,
might be too much, might be even too much. But let's just say Fiora. There's all the Fiora matchups: Camille, Aurelia, Ornn. There's a Kali matchup, whatever it is. There's the identity. Sometimes the identity of your champion has to shift completely in those matchups, or the conditions you're trying to bring about for X champion. You don't even have to push the pace of the game. There's some games where I'm playing Twist of Fate and I don't even have to push the pace of the game. I'm completely fine. And I think what you're saying is right. I think a positional coach could still get good results. But I'm thinking to the next level. I'm thinking, what is it going to look like in 20 years from now? What are the positional coaches in 20 years from now going to be doing? And for me, I'm trying to see this, because obviously I'm biased, because I'm a mid lane coach, and obviously I'm not working at pro level, and I don't even have any vested interest in this, so I'm trying to be as objective as possible. But I'm trying to think, okay, in 20 years from now, this game is going to be incredibly advanced. It's evolving. There's going to be new concepts. If I'm earning 350 grand a year as a professional mid laner.
Hmm.
If I want a positional coach, I want someone who I don't have to explain to them the way these matchups go. I don't want to have to explain to them all these things about these matchups. Like, I want them to come in and already be at a pretty high level. Yes, they may not be able to beat me in a 1v1, but I want them to be like, play devil's advocate 24/7 on my perception of the way this matchup is meant to be played out. And yes, you could probably do that as someone who doesn't really understand the intricacies, but wouldn't it be better if we're just talking about optimizing here? Wouldn't it be better? Imagine if you would have Fantix next to you when back in 2017, if Fantix was your positional coach and helped you as your personal mid lane coach. How much better would you have been if he had the skills of a coach, both in terms of translating information, asking high quality questions, and had that granular understanding of the matchups?
I see what you're saying, and like I do see what you're saying. I think that like let me try. I'll rephrase and adjust kind of like my previous thought. Then I think that you could have someone that could learn a role, like they could learn 2 roles.
Right.
So I think that if you decided for whatever reason that you wanted to also coach top, and you invested time into doing that, I think that you could do both solo lanes.
Definitely, yeah.
Right. So I think because you already understand what a solo lane looks like, the barrier to entry for understanding another solo lane isn't as high as, say, you're coming from like another position.
If you're gonna if I'm gonna like 80 carry jungle, like it's a whole different ball game.
Yes, it's a whole different thing. Like the thing that I struggled with the most in the one-on-ones this year was jungle, probably, which is interesting because like I worked with jungle like the most in my career, but I found mid very easy to do one-on-ones with. I found top very easy to do one-on-ones with. Support also relatively easy, and then jungle AD were the hardest 2 for me. And I think that I'm just saying that because you already have a fundamental understanding of one-on-one matchups and like general tendencies that happen in one-on-one lanes, that you, if you wanted to, could learn top and become a dual role coach. I think that you have the ability to become an expert in 2, because then it's also like it's not just about you in the lane. It's not just about like bringing about XYZ, creating gameplays or slowing down gameplays or whatever, but it's also like how that fits into the overall draft of the team, because you always have to bring it back to the team stuff, because it's not just you. It's like, how does that fit into the overall objective of what the team comp wants to achieve? And then you can talk about the nuances, like how do you match up with a jungler versus their jungler, like blah 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 blah, and go down the list. But you can make it almost as complex as you want it to be, depending on the player that you're coaching. It's like, does your player like thrive off of understanding the intricacies, or do they work better when you give them a general idea of like how they should interact with the lane depending on their jungler? It's like, or like, do you want to play for like this first dragon? Because it changes like how you play the lane. It's like, do you want to create a slow push for this, or like, what is the objective of the game also within like, and how does your laning reflect that? And then that's also something that like you can. Because no one knows. It's like as a head coach, like I would talk to the positional coaches about how I want like specific things to be implemented, because matchups don't exist in isolation. So that's what I meant between like, there are skills 100% that you can, like, you might not understand like the matchup, but you can understand the matchup. Like,
yeah, it's possible. Like
you would, like, if you wanted to, like, and you dedicated time to doing it, you would understand the matchup.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, this is something, I mean, I'm just exploring it. I don't have the answer.
But like, if you like, you can go both ways. Like, you can have someone for every single role. Like that's perfectly reasonable.
That'd be a massive task though. That, like, thinking about that, Imagine the task of being a head coach and then having like 5 positional coaches. That'd be fucking insane.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, make sure they're talking the way you want them to be talking to. How does that affect the bigger picture? How does that affect the influence? How does it affect the culture, the team environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's something we need. I mean, it would be super interesting just to see the way coaching, because it's so new. It's just coaching in esports is just at like fetus level. Literally just started. Like, I mean, think about where coaching was in 2016. It's like basically non-existent.
Yep.
You know, of at least very, very surface level. And it's only just started to really become the norm, you know, season 6, season 7, and where we are now. I mean, there are so many question marks, but it always fascinates me. It's like, holy shit, what is it going to look like in 10, 20 years from now?
Talk about, Simon, the next stage of, you know, you talk about, think about the next stage of your life and stuff like that. Could that be in 20 years' time? Could you be a coach for 20 years?
Like, I very well could be. It's like, maybe, like, it's like the only reason that I can't conceptualize it at the moment is because, like, it's like what I'm aiming for isn't like super long term.
That's right.
Whereas,
you could
like,
be an LCS,
and I really enjoy this specific aspect, and I'm not going to get that anywhere else. And I'm going to do that until I stop enjoying that. And let's say I stop enjoying that in 2 years, like, so be it. I move on to the next thing. I stop enjoying it in 10 years, like, whatever. Like, I move on to the next thing. It's just like, it's just about where you want to see yourself. And I think the thing about being a player and like transitioning to a coach was that it taught me to have those like check in with myself and to see where I'm at as a person more often. Because I don't want to be in the position again where I'm not enjoying something for like 2 or 3 years, and then realize that I could have made a move a lot earlier. It's just so, and like but like it's good. Like, I'm happy that I have that lesson now, even if it took me, like, that's what those 2 years were for me. Like, it's a positive spin on it, but it is what it is.
Well, I think we should probably wrap this one up. So we can go on for quite a while.
Well, we got to jump into some questions now, because we're
holy moly, this is a long one.
This is the longest BBC episode yet.
Nathan, I think we don't do. Maybe we really keep it short. The questions.
Yeah, we'll see how we go, but we can cut the questions to 2 or 3 if we need. Because there's only 4 that I've got lined up.
Okay.
All right, so let's jump into. Hopefully this works. Oh, there's 3 of us there. All right, so first question here is from Zaneer. So he says, you guys talk a lot about different aspects of the pro scene, which provides tons of info. Most of us listeners can piece together a general idea of both Curtis and I's backgrounds. That being said, what if Coach Curtis, we'll pose this question to Simon as well, was a 15-year-old mid laner in NA right now with maybe about 2 casual seasons of league looking to go pro? What would his timeline journey to pro look like, schedule, mentality, goals, etc.? So pretty interesting question. If you could put yourself, let's start with you, Curtis. Put yourself back as a mid laner. Let's say you're gold right now. You've been played 2 casual seasons, because we think it takes about at least 3 years to get to Challenger in given today's environment. What would his timeline journey? Let's start with Curtis's mentality, goals. Should he take it year by year? Like, okay, if he's
right
gold
now, let's just say if I'm a 15-year-old right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very hard because I can't. I mean, I was just an absolute idiot at 15. But let's just say I had that goal. Okay. So this is the advice I would give myself, right? Is this the way we're supposed to frame it?
Yeah, let's frame it that way. Yeah.
If I were to give myself advice, okay. If I were to talk to myself right now, let's say 15-year-old Curtis is right there. I would say I'd say the mentality you first have to adopt is you have to view getting better at League as a craft, and every decision you make will have an impact on how much you will or won't improve at the game, both from the way your self-talk, the people you surround yourself with, your daily schedule, the intensity by which you practice. Everything matters. And I would say that you have to view everything, as like a craft that you have to refine and tinker with. Because I'd say the biggest mistake I made back in the day, because I mean, I was like you, Simon, I just kind of stumbled into it. I was just happened to be good at SoloQ, but I took it too casually, very casually. And if I were to view myself as a craftsman, I wanted to become a craftsman of the mid lane. And the attention to detail, I didn't realize how important the attention to detail was. So I would preface the entire thing with that. And then I would say, number one, get your schedule sorted. Look to make your days as efficient as possible. And you have to be willing, first of all, you have to be willing to make a lot of sacrifices. If you're not willing to make sacrifices, both with your social life, with your girlfriend, mainly your social life and things like that. Because the time that you're otherwise going to go to parties and drink on the weekends and all this shit, there's going to be multiple sacrifices you're going to have to make if you want to reliably become a pro player by the time you hit 17, 18. Like, you have to already be a pretty high elo by 17, 18, ideally, to be recognized by talent or by organizations. Because they want a long-term investment. They want a lot of these orgs nowadays want a long-term investment. So first of all, be willing to understand that there's sacrifices. First of all, get your schedule sorted. Make sure if I'm at school or university that the time at school, I actually focus and I do as much work as possible at school. So when I come home, I don't have to have the mental baggage. I don't have homework going everywhere. I've done everything I can at school or university to make my life easier when I go home so I can dedicate as much time as possible to the game. I would create like a routine in the sense that like I never don't review a game. I always at least review a game, even if it's like a complete stomp, to get something from it. I would obviously invest in a coach. I would also find and try and find other higher elo players than me to just talk about the game, or at least a community of higher elo players where I can just ask some questions and talk about the game. And I would tell myself, no question is too dumb. If something seems like a really simple question, it's probably very important. And my mentality would be, no one else matters. It's me versus myself. Like, it's literally me versus myself. And the only person preventing myself from going pro is myself. So if I'm able to become the most resilient, focused, intense competitor and be the best version of myself, the chances of me going pro are going to be very high, because everyone else is self-sabotaging. You look around at SoloQ, most 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, they're self-sabotaging themselves every single day by tilting off the face of the earth, getting an incredibly big ego and preventing themselves from getting into good quality review, or surrounding themselves with memes, meme culture, and like toxic circles. So I would get rid of all that shit, focus on myself, and yeah, get a really meaningful coach, role model to guide me on the right direction. Yeah, that's probably say the biggest things. Simon?
Curtis, I like everything that you spoke about. I do. So I'm not gonna say everything again. But also going into it, I would want to ask, I would want you to ask yourself why. Because the reason that you come up with there is going to be an anchor for yourself that you can fall back on when everything becomes shit. So when you feel like you're not making progress, or you've been stuck, or something's gone wrong in other parts of your life, and you can't dedicate as much time to League as you want, or whatever it may be, you need to understand yourself, and you need to understand why you want to do it. So even something like, it's just a simple, like, I want to prove that I can be the best at this, or like I want to go pro for whatever reason it is. Like, you need to have a reason for doing it, and you need to follow through on that. Like, you need to use that as inspiration for yourself. Whether like it can be like you can be having fun doing it, like that, like whatever it is, Like, I have fun doing this, and I want to do this professionally, or whatever it is, because that's going to be your main motivating factor, and it is yourself. And if you try and find inspiration or motivation in other people, it's going to be flawed eventually. Like, you'll see through it at some point, or whoever says it to you maybe might not live up to like ideals. So you need to be your own source of motivation and inspiration. And then the second thing is routine. You need to have a good routine.
I want to emphasize 2 points from Curtis's. I mean, for me, reviewing wasn't even a thing I understood that you could actually improve from reviewing. It was like such a foreign concept. Was it for you guys as well? Back when did you ever review your games in SoloQ in like season 2, season 3?
Nope.
Was that because of replay system? Like, did it ever cross your mind that it could help you improve?
Yeah, it did. But I just would try and obviously, like, I just try and remember the game. But yeah, I can't remember there being a very good. When did Proviews come?
Proviews.
That was like 2018. That was ages.
Sorry, not Proview. What was the
replays? In-game replays.
Oh, the other one. There was another one.
Yeah.
Play TV.
Yeah. Whenever that came in, that was amazing. That was fantastic. But yeah, no reviews for me. But now you should obviously be doing that.
I mean, so reviewing, and I would say the most important one, and you sort of said, Curtis, you sort of like fluffed over it, saying, you know, don't be in meme culture and like the groups. Like, there is so many toxic groups in League that you can associate yourselves with, and you talk about Simon, about you need to be really like solid in what you're doing, like why you're doing it. I find that even if you can come up with that as a 15, 16-year-old, your influences around you will start pulling you different directions very quickly. You need to be very careful of this, because I think I don't want to name names, but there's many players that I've seen whose careers have been destroyed by the people they hang around. They had like a lot of potential. I don't know if you guys could relate to that at all, but
definitely.
And again, like trying to get other perspectives on your gameplay. Again, like what Curtis said about going for the high elo people. I mean, if you can find a coach, that's best case scenario. I would be going out of my way to find like an actual coach for my role. Again, just asking people, just try and always be seeking knowledge at all times.
You got to be a vacuum.
Yeah, got to be a vacuum. I never went out of my way to learn other champs because I never actually cared about other people's opinions, which was like my own ego. I was like, I'm just going to play Tank Uda every game. And it works in SoloQ, you know, like even when it was banned in me against competitive, I'd still play that one style, but my ego always held me back from learning like the Lee Sin. Like I had actually properly play jungle. And I never got another perspective. No one told me why that was going to be pretty bad for me in terms of like a career. So
just to follow on from that, from what Nathan said, like this is one thing I always wish that someone told me this younger. And this is like, I guess for League, but also in life, like you can extend it to you as a person. First of all, what sort of player do you want to be known as? And what sort of qualities do you want to display? Do you want to be known as the toxic rager guy that if he doesn't get ahead in the first 15 minutes, just FFs? Or do you want to be known as the most resilient player in SoloQ? Do you want to be known as the most annoying player to verse or the hardest laner to verse? Like what sort of player do you want to be known as by everyone else in SoloQ? Because what happens is that if you know what sort of player you're actively trying to become, then it's much easier to kind of reverse engineer what you need to do to become that sort of player. Because yes, we're going to sit here and say, review games, get a coach, blah, blah, blah. But if you have an idea or a clear picture of the sort of player you want to be, you can kind of intuit what you need to do. Then, okay, it
will become your oyster. You'll always be, every piece of information you see, you'll be trying to help you get better at whatever you're trying to be as a player.
Well, then it's no shit. It's like, if I want to be the most resilient player, okay, how do I become more resilient? Maybe I need to read up on what some other pro athletes did to get rid of fear of failure or perform when it really mattered, or, you know, whatever it is. You can study books and read books and things like that. And that also extends to like out of game, like what sort of person do you want to be? I feel like I was so late to this, and it wasn't until I was like 22, 23, that I really started to think, what sort of person do I want to be? And it felt like I didn't know, and I didn't know how to distribute my time in my life or how to weigh certain activities that I could do or how I could spend my time because I didn't know what I was trying to bring about. I was always bringing it to like an outcome or like rather than like be a sort of person, because the reason this is important is because if you can pinpoint the sort of qualities that you want to have as a person, the outcome is inevitable. Like if you think about the sort of person that would be a world champion, what sort of qualities spring to mind? You know, they'd be incredibly probably disciplined, hardworking, passionate, you know, a craftsman. They pay attention to detail. Like these qualities or aspects of them as a person, like it's inevitable that they're going to be good at what they do. So I think that, and wish I asked myself this question, is like, yeah, you may not know. You're not going to have this is going to evolve over time, but at least have some rough idea of like, yeah, what sort of person you want to be, man. It's definitely what I'll tell myself.
I like it. Anyone else? Anything else to add there from anyone?
No.
All right. Next question here. Hi, Curtis and Nathan. I'm a big fan of the show, and I find it particularly interesting when you guys talk about one-tricking. I finished Diamond 4 in an A this past season, top lane with about 400 Renekton games, 100 Sec games, and a handful games on other champs. I have 2 questions about the situation. What defines a one-trick, and would you consider me to be one? Number 2, should I expand my pool for next season to include whichever top laners become meta if my goal is to hit Master Tier? Thanks for pumping out quality league content. Cheers, Max.
Let's get Simon's opinion on this.
So just at a glance, like one tricking is someone that plays the game, that's like competitive at the game, but doesn't actually, or has fun only playing one thing, but doesn't actually want to become pro. It's like competitiveness without being a pro, because obviously you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're a one trick and you try to become like no one's going to pick you up because one thing gets banned against you and you're done. What it does generally show though is that your ability, like if you did want to branch out, that you have the ability to, depending on like the level that you're at. So I think a really good example might be Chovy, because Chovy was a one trick for a really long time from memory. And then
Showmaker was a cat one trick.
Was it Showmaker? Okay, sorry, yeah. So Showmaker, yeah, he was a cat one trick. Obviously has the mechanics to be able to learn other things and like take lessons from Katarina and apply them to other parts of his gameplay. So it's not to say that like you can't do it, but it depends on what goal you want out of yourself. So if you want to become a pro player, yes. If your goal is to hit master, like probably not, to be honest. I think that like you're legitimately fine and honing in on 1 or 2 champions like your Renekton set, and just becoming insanely good at them, you'll be able to hit master tier. That's actually my, if that's your goal, that like you can do this. I would say that your 400 Renekton games and 100 set games, like your borderline a one trick, yes. It depends. Do you feel like when you play, it's like when you play other games with other champions, do you have the same amount of impact with those champions as you do with Renekton? Or do you just genuinely like playing Renekton? It's like, what is it about Renekton that makes you a one trick? If you can only influence the game at a high enough level through Renekton, then you're a one trick. If you like playing Renekton, but you can influence the game through a whole bunch of other champions, you're not a one trick, you're just choosing to play Renekton. It's kind of like how I think about it, to be honest.
Well, the way I view it, yeah, similar to, I won't expand on that, the one trick, defining one trick, but I think, again, it depends on your long-term goal. I think the fastest way for you to hit Master Tier would be to continue this. This isn't going to mean you're going to be the best player, though. It may mean if this is the fastest way to become Master, but if you wanted to reliably hit Master across seasons, or you wanted to get higher than Master Tier, or you wanted to be a better overall top laner, then yes, expand your pool. So I think it really does come down to what your goal is.
Okay, here's a question. If he was to, is there a limit where you want to be? So you know how you said, Curtis, there's the fastest way to climb high elos to be a one trick. And you said that if you can be a better top laner by playing other champions, but do you get better by playing against better players? If he was to hit master tier and then be challenged mechanically and macro wise and stuff at a master tier level, is that going to help him learn other champions quicker? Like the Showmaker example as Cat.
I think it's. I genuinely think this is where there's something that I'm not sure on, which is champion specifics. If you get to master only playing a champion like Renekton, it's very different to if you get to master only playing Fiora or only playing Camille or only playing Akali. I think it's very different. I think there's certain skill. This is why I'm actually such a big hater of one tricking is because, okay, there are some players who they're just good at the game. They're a good gamer and they're really competitive and they can use these skills to learn other champions and things like that. But I've seen a lot of the time, they're fucked. Like they've maybe one tricked a certain champion, Aurelion Sol. I've literally had someone who was he got to challenger with Aurelion Sol, tried to expand his pool, go all the way back to D4 or plat one. With the D4. Yes, from challenger. I've seen players get challenger go to D4 level because they're literally just there, challenger at ASOL, but they're not a challenger mid laner. They're literally a Diamond 4 mid laner. So, because they're not able to learn the underlying concepts with certain champions. You're not going to be able to learn great wave or mana rationing with Yasuo. You're not going to be able to learn proper wave management with Vlad because you just get shoved in 24/7. There's certain champions that I feel like you can, but you can't at the same time. So I think it can actually hurt people. But then again, it just really depends on what your goal is. And Simon, what were you going to say before? What were you going to say something before?
No, that was, I can't remember. It was like the last. No, I don't remember. It's okay. All good.
It's all good. So yeah, Nathan, in responding to what you said, I think that I don't have the answer to that question. I mean, I don't know because yes, he's getting better quality practice at that level, but then it's like.
Well, we always say that the confidence you lose from going challenger back down to D4 can literally destroy a player. I think that there's just no way they can.
Yeah, sometimes they just don't recover.
They don't recover. Yeah.
So if you just want to get master tier in the shortest period of time, I would stick with it. Given a sort of super niche champion, Renekton's always pretty solid. It's a pretty solid champ.
All right.
It's the same thing as Power of Evil, right? It's like, what do you want? Do you want if you want to hit master, I think this is and you've already invested this much time into it, just go do it. And then once you hit it, maybe, and you decide to set a new goal for yourself, you can do something else. But I think that this is probably the best way to do it. If you've already done it like this, just keep doing it.
All right, we'll do one more question here. This is from Lina in Denmark. Hey, Nathan and Coach. First of all, love the podcast and your content. I am a mid laner, watch Curtis, and jungler watches me. Awesome to hear. So I finished Silver 2 last season. I was wondering, do you guys ever tell your clients that they shouldn't be playing their champions due to the skill level of them? I'm asking this because my favorite and best champions are Cassiopeia and Ozia. I also enjoy playing Corki and Anivia. I understand that these champions are generally pretty hard to play well, and sometimes people tell me to just play Annie, which I'm terrible at. Playing something simple also feels like I'm giving up in a way. It makes me think things like, I guess I'm too bad at the game to play blank champion. I usually say that I just play what I enjoy and what I know how to play. I also believe that it's good for me to use champions like Azir that could potentially let me go all the way to high elo. As someone who wants to try to go for Challenger this year, this seems the way to go. For context on this, I really want to go pro in LoL, and my mum has given me until August 2021 to make enough money to move out and take care of myself. If I don't make it, I have to take an education as a teacher, so I'm safe to go for this. What do you guys think? Is it okay for a silver player to play these very skillful champs, or should I swap to something simple?
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, this is a pretty big question. Let's try and answer as efficiently as possible. So for one, you saying you have to go pro by August 2021 as a silver player? That's probably not possible.
He wants to go challenger.
Oh, he wants to go challenger. Okay.
I mean, I just don't think it's possible.
I mean, okay, so let's say whether it's possible or not. I mean, let's take the steps towards it. There's no way you can be playing Annie to get there. It's probably really bad.
Wait, Nathan. I think I should answer this one because it's mid lane.
You're a mid lane, yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about here.
First of all, I don't want to say impossible, but I think the chances of you being able to get challenger from silver in that short a period of time is borderline impossible, though. Like, it's pretty close. I don't know, Simon, if you would agree with that.
I'm just trying to think about like when I became good and like how long it took.
Curtis and I have talked about this before. We can't relate the way we got good to nowadays.
It's different. It's harder nowadays. It's definitely way harder. Because no one knew what they were doing back then, and it was kind of like whoever is faster at
whoever invested
learning
more time,
and who invested more time was just going to be challenger.
Yeah,
in a weird way. But I mean, for me, even with that, I was gold, then diamond, then challenger in season 3. So, sorry, season 4. So I really don't think that you could get to diamond. I think if you really try to get to like D4. That's if you like going hardcore, but challenge is basically impossible. Okay, so first thing, it's a misconception that it's not like you're gonna play Annie, and just because you play Annie, like you're gonna have to play Annie all the way to high elo. Like, it's perfectly normal to shift your champion pools, and you're actually hurting yourself by playing Azir in silver. Like, you're actually stunting your learning by playing Azir in silver, because there are so many elements to that champion that are incredibly difficult. You just don't have the character control. You don't have the mouse finesse. You don't have the tethering. You don't have the ability yet to play a champion like that. And it's kind of like, when you learn, even like in a traditional sport, you don't just go from just learning something to versing a very good player. Like, okay, that's probably not a great analogy. What's another analogy? Feel free to chime in whenever, Simon, because
I'm trying to think of something to help the analogy. Would be like a sport where you use like a tool, and like maybe like golf, or I don't know, like I never played golf. Something where you use a tool, and like the better you are, the more like range of tools you can use, or whatever it is. But you wouldn't start with like this specific one or whatever, right? Because there's no point, because you can't utilize the effectiveness of it properly. It's like this tool's strength. I wish I played sports so I could actually make this analogy. But this tool's strength you will be underutilized by you, right?
I mean, there is no strength to it, like, essentially, as well.
Yeah, it's like the nuance of it will be completely lost because you haven't mastered the fundamentals of the game. It's
you're actually wasting time, because you actually don't. You hurt your ability to learn the fundamentals with Azir. That's why Annie is great. Is because you don't have to think about a lot of these really, like, the basic things are much simpler, and you can actually hone in. You can really hone in on specifics with Annie, which then once you get the groundwork done, right? Once you get the groundwork done, then you can add difficulty to it over time, slowly. Yeah, it's called progressive overload. It's like in gym and stuff like that.
Yeah, the champions that you've named here, like Cassio, Azir, Corki, and Anivia, they are more difficult. Like on a micro level, which just and then also whilst also not being very strong currently. So whilst I don't think, like, if you get good at anything like an elo, like you can play it. I think that if your goal is to rank up quickly, these are not the champions to do it with, because you just have to look at it in terms of, like, if I say, if you want to get to that, if you want to get to like challenger eventually, or very, very quickly, don't take on impossible tasks, which, like, these are very, very difficult things to learn.
Mm.
I don't know. I can't like. It took me like, I don't know, like 100 games at a challenger level, 150 games to like get decent at Azir.
Yeah, me too.
Like, and that was when he was good. Like,
This is very hard.
he's a very, very challenging player. The champion that I think taught me the most about mid lane was Orianna.
Yeah, that's why I always recommend Orianna. Orianna is like just the bread and butter. Like you just learn.
So
everything
Alice
with
always
Orianna.
talks about Annie. Is Annie, from your guys' opinion, actually good to learn mid lane as well?
It is to get the absolute. Because okay, Simon, we're not going to. You won't really resonate, but and you probably won't even understand this because you came from Dota. A lot of people when they first start really playing the game, the actual mechanical element of controlling a mouse and being able to like accurately click on a minion and process which minions are getting low and knowing how to alter your positioning in reference to the minions that are getting low. This is stuff that's not intuitive for people. So what Annie does is because CSing with the Q is so easy and because your identity, your champion identity is so clear. I have a button that allows me to gap close. I can land a stun, land a trade, and get out. It dumbs down the entire mid lane, both trading patterns, ability to CS, and makes your champion, having a very clear champion identity makes the entire process very easy. So you can get a hold of that. You can get, now I can walk up, the minion's low, I can get it and walk back. It's very simple trading patterns. Even Cassio, that's why Cassio is hard because the Q is relatively difficult to hit.
I just don't play Cassio. Like you like just don't play Cassio. It's like her trading patterns are like random at the like.
They're
mana
not clear at
management
all.
mana management is such a big issue on Cassiopeia at the moment.
Yeah.
Like you are
Very
going
hard.
to feel so disempowered playing that champion.
You're gonna feel like a bot. And Annie, what happened? You'll verse an Annie at your elo, and Annie will walk up a level 6 and just kill you.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck do I do?
And Nivea is the same. Corki is like almost the same. It's like the four of these champions, like
Some of the hardest in the game, honestly.
yeah,
Up there.
because the thing about these champions is that like, well, Corki and Nivea like require you to lose the lane softly, which is a very hard skill to get good at.
You have to minimize. You have to just minimize. Because going even is winning.
Yeah, which isn't something that I would promote as like a introductory level concept to League.
Definitely not. So yeah, I think TLDR here. Don't feel bad for playing Annie. And if Annie doesn't click with you for some reason, maybe you don't just like Annie, try Orianna. Like Simon says, I think Orianna is equally good at learning the fundamentals. And by fundamentals, it's on my channel. Like you need to you need to be able to CS without looking at your character. You need to be able to know how to alter your character's location in reference to minions that are getting low. You need to be able to see which minion is getting low and be able to position appropriately. Then you need to be able to know which of the enemy your minions are getting low, so then you can actually time your trades with the enemy. Like this is absolute basics on trading 101. That's what you need to be able to do. And Orianna and Annie are great at teaching that. Yeah, so Orianna and Annie, I would say that, and the great thing is about those champions, once you get to high gold, right? Or like generally the way I view Annie is the ticket to plat. As soon as you get plat, put it to the side. Orianna's great because Orianna's played all the way to the top challenger, but you can add in another champion because then you're going to have the micro ability or the lane understanding or the mechanical prowess to be able to learn some of these other champions. So take it one step at a time. And this is going to speed up the process, if anything. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot in there, isn't it? Like silver to challenger is like the amount of oh my god. The amount of stuff that you have to learn.
What would the equivalent be in like if you were to take another industry? It's kind of like, okay, take like a PhD level understanding of like, take like PhD and into like schooling. What difference in education are we talking here? Like
it's like year 8 physics and like It's like
a PhD.
I actually don't even know. It's like it's so difficult to compare these two. It's like Hawking radiation and year 8 physics. It's like discovering like something. It's the more you learn about League, it's like the more you realize how much there is to learn about League.
Yeah.
It never stops. It's like
it doesn't stop.
It's like we're like at like not like maybe not the peak, but like very close to that. Like maybe 1 or 2% off, or whatever. And it's like the closer you get to it, the harder it is to to get it. And the peak is going. It's like continuously building,
growing.
So it's you'll find that you will plateau, and you'll find that the increments in the level that you're improving by will drop off over time. It's like you'll do the most learning in between silver to like diamond, and then you'll have to find a way to measure how well you're improving. Otherwise, you'll become completely demoralized.
Yeah, I always say like the difference between I would say the difference between D4 and D1 is like, easily silver to plat, or something like around that, or even like high silver to plat 4, and then like the difference between like diamond 1 to like low, even diamond 1 to grandmaster is still equivalent of probably like,
yeah,
it's huge.
Curtis, do you ever struggle with so when you because I have, when you look at somebody play, can you accurately pinpoint where they are, like in terms of their elo? Because I'm not gonna lie, every time I look at anyone from silver to like diamond, I don't know where they are. But
I'm very good at it. I can I can tell where they're at in basically the first 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
That's because between like mid diamond to Chall, I can differentiate the levels between there. I cannot like. I guess I've never like tried to talk like, because what you just said about like literally your character's relation to the minions is something I've never given an active thought to. Right? Like
it's all this stuff, Simon, that trust me, it's fascinating, because when it's fascinating, man.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff is like, I just would not know where to begin. Like with some like with like the lower elos, like it all looks the same. It all looks the same. In the same way that like when my brother, when he wasn't very high, like looked at Challenger and was like, oh, this is just like gold, but like he can tell the difference between, like when he was in gold, he can tell the difference between silver, gold, platinum, or whatever, and can't tell the difference at the high end. Whereas like I find it difficult to find the difference at the low end, and I can differentiate the high end.
Yeah, you can tell it with literally in the first like 2 waves.
Far out. That's nutty, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
it took me a while, but like you definitely see it, and like you see it with like just character movement and like the way they're CSing and the way they trade. Like you just know instantly what level they're at. Like I reckon I could say it. We should do it as like a challenge one day, Nathan. We should get like a bunch of people's like replays and see who's more.
I feel like jungle's so different. Like I can tell from a jungler their elo based on, and I struggle because people fail ganks in really bad fashion, even just approach the angle they approach in diamond from some of the reviews I've done. And I mean, when they're not interacting with jungle camps, most people are actually pretty good. They'll just look up a tutorial on YouTube and they know how to do a jungle camp clear. Like gold players can clear pretty well, even close to like a super high level. It's not until like, I mean, you could do the first 2 waves. I probably don't know until like the first failed gank, Wait,
Nathan, while we have Simon here, I think we've basically answered Lina's question here, right?
Yeah.
Last thing before we finish this off, me and Nathan had a big argument, or not an argument, but a big discussion about. I had very strong opinions on this. What I said, C9 Academy would win worlds in like, what did I say, season 5 and season 6. I think C9 Academy now would win worlds in season 6. I believe.
First, what about this statement here? Could C9 Academy, that one academy this year, with King and stuff like that, beat season 3 SKT with Faker, Bengi? given the knowledge. You know how you said it's always incrementally increasing and stuff like that.
Come on, Simon. You know
this is good. Let him think about this because you're delusional, man. Honestly,
it's okay. Oh, this is very difficult. But like my initial reaction was absolutely not, and then I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to think about everything that's been taught and everything like that. But I think if I think about the teams that have like, I don't think that C9 like the team that like C9's academy team will they'll hold under pressure. So
you think that pressure? Do you think they have it to be on par with them?
I think on a mechanical ability, like
what season are we talking about?
The different like I think we're talking about season 3, right?
Season 3. We're starting.
What are you talking about, Simon? Come on, are you listening to yourself? You watched your replay in 2013. Let's just look at Ambition. The way they are moving in season 3, that was CJ Entis, right?
Yeah.
Come on, man! It literally looks like bots.
But we were also dude. We were bots. We were lagging, man. But the other
it's not even close.
Yeah, but like,
right, let's use your team. Don't think about academy because I mean you're probably not too far off like C9 academy anyway, right? I mean you could even argue you're on the same level of skill, right? Because UKLEC. Your team could your team win worlds in the last from like season 3, 4, 5, 6, or let's say make it to worlds.
I think make it to worlds. Yeah.
Okay.
I think like the conceptual understanding and like people understanding, like just generally people's based on understanding, yes, 100%. They
make it out of groups, 100% as well.
Yeah, if they didn't shit the bed.
Okay. If they didn't shit the bed, if they didn't hold under pressure.
You guys are both delusional, honestly.
What? I'm agreeing with you.
No, you're not.
No. Curtis is just flat out convinced. Curtis is basically saying your team would beat SKT season 3 100%.
Yes, in like fucking 20 minutes.
Curtis, by the way, I talked to Jack Kays about this. I at least got Kays on my side. He literally said you're delusional as well. So
I don't think you like how much the game is. Okay, let's put it like this.
It's not about that. It's about mechanics and just
let's put it more personal.
Understanding meta.
Okay, let's take you, Simon, in season. Let's not even talk about you in reference to anyone else. Let's take Simon in season 5 to Simon now. If you would have versed yourself in mid lane, so let's say you'd continue to play the game. And you're,
I would stop myself.
It would be it wouldn't even be close, right? It'd be like a fucking like you'd probably view yourself as a goal player, right? Like equivalent. Like it'd be that easy.
Well, that's a bit of a disservice, but okay, sure, let's go with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
it would be, right? Okay. And let's just say the players now, because the reason being, dude, like I view Direwolves in 2017 when we went to boot camp at the beginning of 2017. Some of those guys got Challenger in Korea, right? They were getting Challenger in Korea at an individual level. They were doing Fantix beat Doper in lane. They versed pro players at the time. Chippies was beating some of the top laners in top. Like mechanically, they were basically on par. Mechanically, and yes, the game understanding obviously wasn't there. But
all right, hang on, wait. Can I ask you a different question then? Because I think season 3 SKT is like not a good. What about season 4 Samsung White?
Okay, I just think concepts literally just weren't. Samsung White weren't thinking about concepts that people think about now. That is stock standard now.
No, but what they did was conceptually intuitive. I almost think at the same, like they had the level of understanding that team had. Like even if they couldn't verbalize it, was insane.
I think so as well. Yeah,
that team, you could slot them into any world champion since, and I think that they legitimately would have had a shot at every single title.
Disagree.
I agree.
Close. You guys are completely disregarding the way lanes played out. Like, yes, the macro, whether it intuitively, the macro is not a real. The macro like the basic overarching concept macro wise, yes, that's not really going to change. You know, there's like transference of pressure. We want to kill towers. We want to create man advantage, objective, whatever it is. That's just there. It's not about that. It's about the ability to foresee things happening. It's the ability to create certain conditions through wave management and actual jungle pathing and, you know, bouncing waves and shit like that. Like they're building waves and utilizing built waves and everyone on the team understanding what those built waves means. Like, and the overall laning prowess would have increased tenfold. You can't say that Faker in Season 3, the way he played mid lane, is going to be even close to the way, you know... okay, let's actually use Impact. Impact Season 3 versus Fudge. Fudge would make Impact look like a fucking bronze. I could nearly guarantee you. That's the way
I was just thinking of that, but yeah, okay. If you because you can actually look at player progression and how they match up now to players, and like give them the benefit of the doubt with XYZ like 4 years. Like Faker doesn't win lane that much anymore. He still wins a fair bit, but like Impact probably not. Like if you just look at where the players are now and you compare them to like how they're placing now, right? And you give them the benefit of the doubt of like they haven't stagnated and stuff like that, and I can see how you can make I can see your argument. Like
think about Impact now and how much he would have had to improve to be where he is now, and like he's like he would no way be as good individually as Fudge.
Yeah, but Curtis, how can you compare art? You know what I'm saying, dude? Like this question, it's just impossible. It's just impossible to answer.
I think it's very difficult to answer, but I'm just Curtis is so convinced. That's
I'm not. I actually think Curtis makes a I think Curtis makes a pretty valid point with like comparison of the players now. Like if you just compared how Fudge and Impact interact now and how you can't look at like Faker interacting with anyone in NA.
So you're looking at 1v1 in isolation, not team stuff.
You guys are being way too theoretical. Okay, like Sam just said, Impact. Right. Okay. What I said first. Let's actually deconstruct this argument. Simon in Season 5 versus Simon now. That's 5 seasons. Okay. Let's just say that's 5 seasons. He's saying he would easily beat himself in Season 5. Now let's take Impact and let's say he's played since Season 3. Now in Season 9 or Season 10, he would have had to improve quite a lot, quite significantly. To be where he is now. Like you can't be the same player. You evolve every year, just like you had to evolve every year as a player. That's why you would have beat yourself in Season 5 very easily. Now Fudge would dominate a laner like Impact now. Okay, that's 7 years ago. Put Fudge now, who still was dominating Impact, to the Impact that's had 7 years to improve. I mean, just logically breaking this down, the laning would be so.
He destroys Impact right now, not seeing.
Well, he already would beat Impact significantly in lane now, and then
really significantly, Curtis. Come on.
I would say yes, he would be a significantly better laner, definitely. Okay. And then you've got and then I mean that's now, and then imagine Fudge versus Impact in Season 3 with 7 years to improve as an individual. I mean, I can't. It's not in my brain. It doesn't fathom.
No. I see what you're saying. I do.
You know?
Yeah. Oh well. Unfortunately, we'll never know, Curtis. So you can't be right.
That's right. We'll never know.
Like I'm not even trying to just be right, but I'm really trying to get my head around it. What I'm missing here? Why does this seem so obvious to me?
Missing the magic of 2013 SKT, Curtis. That's what you're missing.
The magic, man. Fuck the magic.
Season 4 Samsung. That's right.
Yeah.
Fuck the magic. Okay, what year was Insect invented?
Season 2.
Season 2,
Season 2?
It was the same with Mad Life, I think, yeah. No, Mad Life was Season 3, I think.
And think about how, like, everyone was thinking Monty was, like, a analytical genius for creating the word rotations. That was in Season 3. Remember? No one even had heard of, like, rotations.
Yeah, but people did it, but people didn't have a word for it.
Like, I'm just trying to give a bit of context here to what was known concept-wise as well.
No, you're
Disregarding
right. There has been a substantial amount of learning in the last 10 years.
All right, let's leave it there, Curtis.
Leave it at that. I'm just getting heated over that shit because the reason I thought Nathan couldn't understand it is because he's just a jungler and he doesn't understand how like laning.
No. Like I think you'll find that the laning matchups, like the people would dominate. I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I legitimately I don't think unless these players actually peaked in season 3.
maybe.
Unless all these players peaked in season 3, then it probably not happening. But if we give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they didn't, then yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, that wraps us up for Broken by Concept episode 19. Simon, did you have any parting words, any shout outs, anything else you want to say here?
Shout out to you guys for having me on. It was and thank you, Curtis, for reaching out. I had a blast, guys.
Yeah, no problem at all, man. Glad to have you on.
You're an excellent first guest, Simon. It's gonna be hard to talk. Maybe people are gonna be so scared to come on the show now because they're like, well, how are we gonna talk for 3 hours and 30 minutes? Curtis nothing to do with Simon.
Yeah.
Like Joe Rogan, man. It's like a fucking Joe Rogan.
Literally a Joe Rogan episode. We're challenging Joe Rogan, yeah. All right. We'll see you guys next time.